I had to figure out what I was looking at there for a minute. Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, whatever you feel like you are tonight, welcome into the Grass Factor podcast and Thirsty Thursday. I will be your cruise director tonight. I am here to keep you both drunk, happy, and, well, on the straight and narrow as well. We can do all those things all at once, and we are going to do them. Matt is in the background. He is at the plant working on a top secret project. So, if there is anybody watching, this is all intellectual property. Don't do anything wrong with it. And then also we've got Ray and our very, very special guest for the second time on the program, Dr. Travis Shaddox. Gentlemen, how are we doing this evening?
I'm great. How are you? How's Hawaii, Ray?
Oh,
Are there any?
plenty of
Are there any?
fun.
All right.
Plenty of fun. Yeah.
Is there any?
Yeah.
What were you
Is there
gonna
any
ask?
lava flowing?
Love.
No lava
Okay.
flowing, but
Good.
we just went through one of our epic winter rainstorms. That's
What's it? What?
usually natural disaster worthy.
What is the quantity of water that equals an epic rainstorm for Hawaii? How much water are we talking about? How much rain?
Oh, I measure it in terms of number of inches of water per minute.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
because
epic.
because people, they think, oh, it's only rain. What are you bitching about? Well, get back to me when an inch of rain falls in, say, 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll rediscuss.
Mm.
You see, that's Hawaii weather. Is that it might not rain for weeks, months, whatever, and then all of a sudden a weather cell rolls in, and we get an inch of water in 10 minutes.
Mm.
I don't know if I've ever seen that. I lived in even through a hurricane, and I'm not sure if I saw that much rain. But you got me
Well,
trumped on that one. You got me beat on that one for
no,
sure.
I've seen it happen where it's an inch of water coming down in an extremely short period of time. I mean, it's not an inch over 24 hours. It's an inch in
Yeah.
less than an hour, all at once.
All right.
I mean, that's
wet.
the tropics for you. That's the tropics
Yeah.
for you. And then as soon as that has come, it just disappears, and it leaves all manner of flooding, because I don't know of any kind of infrastructure capable of dealing with that much water all at once. You know?
No,
Yeah.
I can see how that's problematic, and
That's why I like lawns on sand, Ryan. That's why I like them on sand, because that way, if the weather does that, then I don't have turf grass that's several inches underwater for a prolonged period of time.
mm, I can see how that's problematic, and at the same time, though,
Mhm.
also, and Dr. Shax probably doesn't know this, but I'm very slowly
Hell yeah!
trying to enable and push Ray to move to the continental United States, get out of Hawaii. So,
All right.
Well,
maybe Ray, this is
you don't
this is another selling point. Typical rainfall amounts, right? What a
Mhm.
great idea.
Okay,
No
Ray, I
flash
got a
flooding.
question. Let's assume that you agreed with Ryan and you're going to move to the continental United States. Where do you move?
Oh, I want to hear this.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you. It's like I have a list of top 5 states, not in any particular order: Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, Kentucky,
Okay. Why?
and South Carolina.
Dr.
All right.
Shaddox has
Why?
intimate knowledge of at least 40% of that, so I want to hear his response to your list.
Do you want to know why one of those states?
Sure, go ahead.
Uh It's because I don't believe in collectivism. That's why. Okay?
You could
Because
have lived for another
typical
million years and not chosen that as your answer. So that's that's why I would have never
okay,
guessed that.
no, you should know. Because the typical move for somebody from Hawaii is they go to California or
Yeah,
Oregon
yeah.
or Washington State, and those 3 states are the last place I would want to end up.
Okay.
No, correction. I would not want to end up anywhere in the Northeast. I'm sorry.
Mm.
Yeah, the Northeast is definitely a unique area. You have to appreciate it for what it is, for sure. I'm not sure if I
Oh,
would voluntarily move there, but there's a lot of good things, but it's definitely unique.
well, let's put it this way. Uh, I've not heard nice things about Massachusetts and New York, for example.
Mm. Mm.
Okay.
New York State or New York City? I mean, New York there's parts of New York State that are awesome. They're just fantastic. When you get down into, New York
Well,
City area, it changes, but
unfortunately, you do realize that New York City makes the rules for the rest of the state, and likewise with California. Southern California makes the rules for the rest of California, and that's the problem.
yeah.
Okay, because you see, this is why, for example, Matt says I'm more like a rebel redneck, and I just don't realize it. No, I realize it all right.
The Hawaiian cowboy. Well, okay. After after our geography and political science education there, democracy, um, we're going to move on to something that we all know a little bit more about in turfgrass science. So here's here's the rundown of the show. We have no idea.
Mm.
Our preparation level for the show is something similar to maybe some of the pop quizzes that Dr. Shaddox used to give in his undergrad classes. I don't know. Well, real quick, are you a fan or not a fan as a educator of pop quizzes?
Well, I never actually taught any classes. I mean,
No.
I team taught a class or 2 with a professor, but
Hmm.
I was always research extension in both of my appointments. I never actually,
Ah,
I never was the director of any course.
fair enough.
So I
Okay.
probably wouldn't do any pop quizzes. What's the to me, the point of the class is not to I got you into, what the point of the class is to, you know, it's an experience. I mean, it's as much as education for the instructor as it probably is for the students. I mean, we're in this thing
Is,
together.
isn't
We're in this
isn't
boat
it isn't it
together
more
here. Let's one point to the next
right?
together.
That's
Isn't it
true.
more about teaching people how to think?
Well, that's a good point, Ray. If you want to know my point on my question, my position on that is I'm not in favor of teaching people what to think. I'm in favor of teaching people how to think critically. We need, as you can tell from my channel, Turfgrass Epistemology,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about
Yes.
learning how to critically think your way through. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll
Be
hear me say,
analytical, right? Yeah, be
yeah,
analytical. I mean, that's
yeah. I mean, yeah, a lot of it's analytical, but it's more just understanding the value of critical thinking. We've lost a lot of that because we're getting 5-second clips on YouTube and TikTok, and people want to just have all the information just crammed in you, and you want to be told what to do and how to do it and why to do it, as opposed to thinking about why are we doing this, critically thinking the
Mm.
process through. Is this a valid method that we've chosen to get to this conclusion, and as opposed to, I mean, you can say put the oven on 350 degrees for 20 minutes. That's what people want usually. People like
Right.
me wanna know why. Why is it 350? Why is it 20 minutes instead of 15 minutes? I wanna understand the process. I wanna be able to think my way through it, and a lot of my channel is sort of based around that concept. Why are we doing what we're doing? How do we know? As opposed to just telling you. I can pull up any BMP book and say, "Here, follow these BMPs, and you're probably better off than not follow."
Well,
But those
and
For
BMP books
sure.
are based upon research that we do, so anyway. But yeah,
So,
so
okay.
I'm not in favor of pop quizzes.
Okay, well, that was a very
We're
good
gonna
answer.
be here
That was
for 5 hours. I give a 5-minute answer on it.
That's
On it
fine.
should have been 5
It's a good segue. So, okay, let's start with this. Let's have a little bit of conversation, then we'll dive into some turf stuff because I think some of your research informs
Yeah.
somewhat of a project, if you will call it, that we're doing over some of our next few episodes through the winter time and
Mm.
trying to develop agronomic plans and stuff and help people take that critical thinking exercise and then give them some tangible
Hey, Demay, can I interrupt you?
please.
Uh, so J Pink and Dr. Shaddox have done their own independent show prep. And so
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
we
we can
from what
do that whenever. I was actually waiting on you
we
to come
will get
back,
there.
Matt.
We will get there. And but since they put hours into this, and I just got this in the pre-show. They put hours into this, and and so we'll let them
Am I
let
gonna
them guide us to the fire. And then if we have to have Dr. Shaddox back to continue on with the simulated company, we can do that
okay.
too.
All right.
He said
All
he's
right.
game.
So
Whatever. Yeah, I'm game with whatever. I'm going to be going over that. We can go over it later this evening, or we can go over. I'm going to be going over that nitrogen paper. I think we're going to talk about Ryan on my show in a week or two. Anyway, I've been getting a lot
perfect.
of voicemails and emails about nitrogen sources and costs and things like, should I be using this product, or is there any value to this, or can I make it more efficient? I've been getting a lot of that, so I'll probably end up going towards nitrogen sources on my channel rather than potassium sources over the next month. I think people are
Mhm.
probably thinking about their ordering and all these things. So I'm all on board with what
Mhm.
you guys are doing, and it'll kind of coincide with what I'm doing on my channel as well. So we can go over that
Okay.
later today or next time on, whatever. But
Perfect.
let's just so
Sure.
if I can just do my thing here just for a couple minutes. So
You do your
let's
thing.
move into the show, okay, and move into what I've prepped, and if I can just pretend to kind of be in charge. I actually like being here, not doing anything. I had no prep really at all. I don't have to worry or stress or read 2 hours of an article before I come on my show. So it's been nice to kind of just show up and do my thing. But as we all know, the Grass Factor show is great, but it would be a shadow of itself without one Mr. John Pinkerton, right? The show's good, but it
True.
would be much, much worse without J Pink. So today we're going to do something very unique. I'm an artist, although I only say that under protest. My wife tells me I am, so I'm saying it, and I don't do the same thing twice. No one wants to see the painter paint the same painting twice. I don't go downstairs and go, oh, I just painted that one. I'm going to repaint it. I'm going to do something new. I'm going to do something fresh, something entertaining, something to keep everybody interested. So today we're going to have a little game that I call What Does J Pink Know? How are we going to play this game? Now, J Pink, unbeknownst to me, sits quietly, very patiently, very calmly behind the scenes doing all this fancy stuff. How do I know this? Because I'm running my own show and it's freaking hard by yourself. Okay. It's not easy. All this stuff you see happens just magically in the background. No, J Pink's doing all this stuff. And so what at the same time, I'm wondering, is he paying attention? Is he listening? Does he know anything about turf? Is he an IT person? I don't know him. Okay.
Oh
I don't know him from
my.
Adam. And so I wanted to know what does J Pink know about turf? The point of what is the point here? Before we get started, here's the point. The point, and this is one thing I asked John before I even started. The point is to not poke fun at J Pink at all. The point is entertainment. That's it. Entertainment and keep people interested and keep people coming to channels like this and channels like mine for evidence-based information. It's just something unique and creative, but it is in no way intended to ridicule J Pink at all. I could have asked him all sorts of questions and he would have known them all, or I could have designed another set of questions and he wouldn't have known any of them. And he could do the same thing to me. He could ask me 20 questions and I wouldn't know a dang one if he could easily do that. So I just want to make sure we're clear. This is in no way intended to make fun of or mock or ridicule J Pink at all. Okay. Because in fact, if we do this again, if it ends up working, well, I'll pick somebody else, and it'll be fair for everybody because it's not intended to do that. It's intended just to have fun and have a good time together as we're going through learning stuff and getting exposure and entertaining the audience. Okay, so here's how the game's going to play. We are going to keep a scoreboard. Okay, we're going to play Ray versus Ryan versus Matt. Okay, as long as Matt's here. Here's the scoreboard.
Shit.
Okay, Matt, Ryan, and Ray. How do you get points? It's really simple. Only thing that you three have to do individually. I'm going to ask Ryan a question, and then I'm going to ask Ray a question. I'm going to ask Matt a question individually, and all you have to do is say yes or no. That's it. Very simple. So if we can go to a test question, that the last question I sent you, Jay Pink, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Jay Pink a question about, could be anything, mostly about turf grass. Some things are about the Grass Factor show itself. And he replied back to me with his answer. All you have to do is say, yes, Jay Pink knows it, or no, Jay Pink didn't know it. Okay? So, for example, the test question, if Jay Pink's ready, we'll do the test question.
In what year was the
question-
Grass Factor Discord created?
So if I asked Jay Pink, what year was the Grass Factor Discord created? He gave me an answer. So collectively, you three, we'll do the test as the example. What do you think Jay Pink knows what year the Grass Factor Discord was created?
And
Yes.
just to be clear, they only have to say yes or no. They don't have to know the answer.
You don't have to know the answer at all. That's
Yes or
correct,
no.
Jay Pink. None of you have to know the answer. You just need to say, yes, Jay Pink knows that, or no, he doesn't know that.
50% confidence intervals. I like it.
Yeah.
So Ryan, do you think Jay Pink knows what year the Grass Factor Discord was created?
Yes.
Okay. Matt, what do you think?
Yes.
Ryan or Ray?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a collective yes on all three. So Jay Pink, what year was the Grass Factor Discord created?
2021.
Now, do you?
That's right.
Nope. What? It was 2020, if I remember correctly. Is that correct, Jay Pink?
It was 2020. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was 2020.
So all of you would have got it wrong. Okay.
Oh man.
So 0,
Damn
0,
it,
0.
John! How did you wreck that one? It was your idea.
This guy's a fucking weirdo.
Okay. All right. So just because the names are from top to bottom, Matt, Ryan, Ray, Matt will go first on the question. So that was just a warm up question. Okay, it was just to give you guys an idea of how these things are going to work. Okay, we'll go basically until we get tired of it or until I say we're going to stop. But we have enough for a little bit of time here. Okay.
All right.
So Matt, if you're ready and you can hear Ryan and Ray,
Yeah.
you don't need to help him out at all because we're in, this is a deep competition. Okay. The winner, this is serious business. Okay. So let's start with question number 1 to Jay Pink.
Red Bull Stadium have natural or synthetic grass?
Does the Red Bulls Stadium, the New York Red Bull Stadium, have natural or synthetic grass? Matt, what do you think Jay Pink knows that?
No,
That's your final answer? He does not know?
that is my final answer.
He does not know. Okay, Jay Pink, go ahead.
Synthetic.
Ding. He said synthetic. It's actually natural. Matt gets a point. So it's 1. There you go. There's the ding, 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 ding. Oh, and by the way, if you get it wrong, the emote for getting the question wrong will be.
It's absurd.
By the way, I didn't even know you guys were doing that. You guys gotta be kidding. So
It's such
ding,
a
ding,
great
ding, you got it
thumbnail.
right. It's absurd is wrong. Okay. All right. So Matt's 1, Ryan 0, Ray 0. Of course, we're still in round 1 here. Okay. Question number 2, Jay Pink.
Latitude 36 Bermuda grass was bred at which university?
Ryan, this is your question. Does Jay Pink know at which university Latitude was bred?
I'll say yes.
Oh,
Jay Pink?
UT.
He said UT. Eh.
It's absurd.
Okay. It's going to keep me going all night. 1-0. Okay, Ryan gets it wrong. Next question is for Ray. Question number 3.
A 24-211 fertilizer has what percentage of nitrogen?
Ray, do you think J Pink knows what percentage of nitrogen is in a 24-211?
Yes.
24%.
Ding, ding, ding. 1-0-1. After round 1, we have Matt 1, Ryan 0, and Ray 0. Very good, guys. So we all understand the game, how it's played. Very good. Okay, back to Matt. Question number 4, J Pink.
The person with the handle Looney is from what country?
Does J Pink know where Looney's
Yes,
from?
he knows.
Canada?
Yes, he knows.
Say it again.
Canada?
Ding, 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 ding. All right. 2 points for Matt.
Boy, John!
He's batting 1,000. All right. Good job. Well done. Well done. All right. Okay. All right. Question
Shout out
number
to my
2.
Leaf, too. Thanks, Looney.
Question number 2
A fertilizer
goes
has the
for
analysis.
Ryan. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
A fertilizer has the analysis 20-0-0. How many pounds of fertilizer do you need to apply if you want to apply 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet?
Ryan? You think J
I'm gonna have
can do that
faith in
math?
yes. Yes.
And he didn't
Yes.
use a calculator as far as I know. So you think he knows it?
Yes.
5 pounds.
5 pounds. Good job, Ryan.
I
He's on the
know.
board. Field
Got
source
faith.
is on the board.
I got faith.
All right, Ray. Question number 2 to Ray is question number 6 on the screen. J Pink, go for it.
Name 5 warm season turfgrass species.
Ray, do you think J Pink can name 5 warm season turf grass? He's been listening to you guys for how many years? I mean, he listens to a lot of turfgrass stuff, but he's not necessarily a turfgrass person. You think he can name 5 warm season turf grasses?
Yes.
Bermuda. Zoysia. St. Augustine. Centipede. Man. Nope. That's it. That's all I got.
He only got 4.
Ooh.
He only got 4.
Oh.
But he got
Getting
4.
Buffalo
Hey,
grass. Buffalo
Wow,
grass. That's all you
I
need.
had- No, I had faith because true story, J Pink and I first met back in 2018 in person.
Okay.
Yeah,
Where'd you guys meet?
because okay, J Pink had family stationed in the military here,
Oh, nice.
and
Okay, good.
we somehow connected because J Pink had to play yard crashers for his family member. Convert
Oh.
500 square feet of weeds to St. Augustine grass turf. And it worked.
Was that before this whole iteration of y'all's relationship, or were you guys already doing this when you all
Yes.
met?
No, it was way before. It was way before we
Oh,
all came together. But
that's interesting.
things kind of evolved rapidly after J Pink and I initially met because next thing you know, I was told something about jumping out of a cake in Louisville, Kentucky in 2021.
Oh, huh. Okay. I didn't know that. Thanks for letting me know. I had no clue. All
Yeah,
right.
it
So that was
and it's-
Ray's. Was that Ray's question?
Yeah. Yeah, we're
Yes,
off the map.
That was
now.
Ray. That was Ray's question. Okay, so that's the end of round 2. It's 2-1 to 1. Matt's ready for his next question. Now, the next question is question number 7 on the screen. J Pink, go for it.
What does the acronym LESCO stand for?
Does J Pink know what LESCO stands for? Does
Not a
anybody
clue.
here know what LESCO stands for? You're from that area though, Ryan, aren't you? You're generally from that area, I think.
Yep.
Right? You know what?
I
I
grew
didn't
up
know
about
it.
an hour
I had to
away.
look it up.
Yep.
So Matt says no, he doesn't know it. J Pink?
No idea.
No idea. 3 for 3. Man, Matt's gonna knock this one out of the park. He's gonna lap you guys if you're not careful. Does anybody in the chat, just out of curiosity, know what the acronym LESCO stands
Yeah, let's
for?
see
I
if
would.
anybody.
You would
Kelly
impress the
says
hell
it
out of me.
means let's eat sausage covered oysters.
I'm not gonna. Let's not even. I guess somebody can Google it. I guess, but let's not even say the answer, and let's see if someone pops it in the chat in the next couple of seconds. If you just Google it and put it in there, that's not fair. But let's go to the next. So that was Matt, 3 for 3. Good God, 3 for 3. Matt, Ryan's next question, 1-1. Okay, so the next question is question 8 on your screen, J Pink, for
Name
Ryan.
4 cool season turfgrass species.
Yes.
You think he can do that? Okay, let's hear it.
Kentucky bluegrass, fescue, ryegrass, bentgrass.
It's absurd.
Ding, ding, ding. You hit the wrong
Sorry.
one.
I hit the wrong sounder. You got it.
He got it. By the way, just this audio, by the way, J Pink, it sounds incredibly good. Just so the audience knows, he's not answering the question live. We've recorded this prior to today. So I asked him these questions a month ago or whatever it was.
Oh shit!
Huh?
I'm figuring he's
Dang.
answering these live. That makes me nervous.
I
Like,
should
what
have
if he
said that.
didn't? I thought he
Yeah.
was like boning up for this test, and he was like all prepared for this. Like he'd been studying for the last month. Put him up to it.
I should have said something. I should have said something. The audio is
the odds on this whole competition.
Yeah, the audio is so clean it actually sounds live. But this was recorded a month ago, and so the questions and answers have already been recorded, and he's just playing the sound bites from each question and answer. So
wow.
But that's good. I mean, it sounds really good. All right, Ray. Let's see where are we at on the screen here. So
Number 9.
Question number 9 goes to Ray. Go ahead.
The 2026 World Cup will take place on which continent?
You think J Pink knows which continent the World Cup will be played on, Ray? There's only 7 continents. So you say no?
Nope.
Okay, J Pink, let's hear it.
Australia?
Ding, 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 ding. You got it right. So Ray is on the screen now with 2. Keep hitting the wrong one. So no, Ray got it right. He said you did not know it.
Sorry.
So it's 3-2. Ray and Ryan is keeping it close. We're going back to Ryan. I'm sorry, back to Matt for question number 10.
What does LD50 stand for?
Does J Pink know what LD50 stands for, Matt?
I'm going to say he does not know lethal dose. I'm going to say no.
Lethal dose 50%.
God.
It's absurd.
Wow.
Nailed me.
Strike one. Strike one
Man.
for Matt.
Yikes.
We're really
streaks going,
calibrating
man.
J Pink here.
I was impressed with that for sure. Yeah.
That was
All right. 3-2, and Ryan and Ray still have one more question in this round. All right. So question number 11 goes to Ryan.
Which state has the most acres of turf grass?
Ryan, do you think J Pink knows which state has the most acres?
No.
J Pink?
Nebraska.
He
It's
got
absurd.
it wrong. You got it right. It is Texas by a country mile. Not even remotely close. Texas is,
Yikes.
I think they equal the next 2 or 3 combined in turfgrass acres. It's insane. So Texas is putting out some turfgrass. I wouldn't think that though, guys. I mean, you think the entire western half of Texas is a desert, basically. You wouldn't think there'd be that much turf, but there is apparently. Anyway, Let's see. So we're on Ray now. So Matt's
Oh,
3,
my.
Ryan's 3. Ray could tie up the whole board right here with question number 12.
In what state does Jesse Busquet live in?
You think J Pink knows what state Jesse Busquet lives in?
Yes.
He does? Okay.
Massachusetts.
There you go.
Yeah.
We're all tied up. Good job, Ray. We are all tied up going into the
That was an easy
what is this?
question.
Yeah.
Easy question.
Well, I don't know Jesse. I've heard him once or twice, and I don't think he comes on my channel, but I've heard him once or twice, and I wasn't actually even sure what the answer was, but I think he knew it. So okay, so we're back to Matt. The next question is question number 13 to Matt.
Fescue is native to which continent?
Do you think J Pink knows which continent fescue is native to?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Africa.
What?
He said Africa.
It's absurd.
So he didn't know. He didn't know. It's Europe.
You did that on
No, but-
purpose, John.
Get fucked.
You did.
So Matt finally strikes. Okay, so it's 3-3. Ryan and Ray still have a
I like
question
the
left in this
smell.
round. He took a lead. Now he's could be behind here at the end of this round.
Choking.
We'll see what happens.
Like a
Question
like a
number
typical
14.
UT fan, choking at the end.
Question number
Name-
14 goes. I'm sorry. Question number 14 goes to Ryan.
Name 4 unique types of slow-release nitrogen fertilizers.
Do you think J
No.
Pink, after listening to you guys for 2 or 3, you don't think he can name 4 types of slow
No.
release fertilizers? No. Okay, let's hear what you have to say, J Pink.
No idea.
Yeah, he said none. No idea. So you got it correct. No, but you were sharp to the end. You were fast to the answer there, Ryan. You had no faith in your partner there.
I'm just trying to calibrate where, where's the value in me scoring a point or not, and that was an easy value, right?
Okay.
It was a 6-week urea application right there. Boom. Felt good.
All right. Ray, next, let's see. The question for Ray is question number 15.
What is the capital of the state where Ryan lives?
We all know Ryan lives in Ohio. Do you think J Pink knows the capital of Ohio?
Yes.
J Pink?
Columbus.
Ding, 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 ding. So Matt was ahead 3-1 to 1. Was that right? I think he was way up there. Now all of a sudden it's flip flop. The back of the pack has not come to the front. This could be down to the wire here. You guys are doing far better than I thought anybody would. So the next question to Matt, he's gonna have to get his thinking cap on here. And the next question is question 16.
What is the active ingredient in Ronstar?
Ooh.
You think?
I
If
have
he says
no idea.
oxidize on, I'm going to shit myself.
Go ahead, JP. Say it again.
I have no idea.
Ah!
No. I just want
I
to point
thought he
out
was
here.
gonna
Hold
Go ahead.
on. You're so fast. I mean, how long has J Pink been working with you guys? How many years?
2021.
3 years.
3 years. He's been listening to all this stuff about turfgrass and no confidence in his ability to say the answer. I mean, that's fast.
I listen.
what-
I look at this as a positive. He has very, very, very selectively filtered us out for the most part. I think that's a perk in his job.
Well, what
Yeah, that's what
I'm
she said.
I'm
gonna-
shit.
well, what I agree with you. What I'm saying is that I don't think anybody could listen to you three and still run the show in the background and comprehend anything you're saying because he's doing so much stuff. That's the whole point. He's so busy. I mean, you can't
Needs a
keep
raise.
up with. You can't. Yeah, you can't keep up with all this stuff. So now it's tied again, but we have 2 more questions left in this round for Ryan and Ray. So the next question for Ryan is question number 17.
The Astrodome is thought to be the first stadium with synthetic turf. What company manufactured the turf?
No.
J Pink.
DuPont.
Does anybody know that answer?
Monsanto.
He said DuPont. Ryan said Monsanto. Does anybody else know the answer? Did anybody else?
Whatever
know?
they were called before Monsanto.
No, it's Monsanto.
Was it?
So you got it correct, man. Now,
Darn.
this, let's see, we can go into like one or two bonus questions, but this was technically going to be like the last question of the game for Ray. But if Ray gets this correct, then we got a tie,
Playoff.
and we may have to go into like sudden death or something. I don't know. So Ray,
Yeah.
this question number 18 is for you. 18.
What year
Right.
did the Grass Factor join YouTube?
You think J Pink knows what year the YouTube Grass Factor account started?
Yes.
Think it was 2003.
It's absurd.
2003. YouTube wasn't even in like a thing.
2003. No, it was
I'm gonna shut up,
2015. Ray missed it.
Shut
Ryan
up,
goes
May.
away with the championship
You
of
win.
what does
All
J
right.
Pink know? All right,
Man,
that's the game.
Congratulations, you won.
I feel
Oh,
honored, blessed. Speech. I didn't know that J Pink in a moment of weakness thought that Matt was making videos and people were downloading them on
That's the
LimeWire.
Wi-Fi.
Back in 2003. So
I'm thoroughly impressed that you guys got that many correct. I mean, a 50-50 shot, you'd think you'd miss half of them probably.
what did we get? We had 13 out of 18 correct answers. That's not bad.
You guys did really
Solid
well.
C students right there. I mean, you got to respect that effort.
Yeah, and half the
Well, I mean-
questions J Pink got correct, half the questions he didn't get correct, and that's what I tried to do. I tried to get like half and half, so it wasn't
Well,
like he didn't know anything
This
or he
isn't-
knew everything.
This is more like an illustration of how well we all know each other. Actually, I mean, this is what it is. It's like it's how well we know each other, and that is why I'm highly unsurprised. For example, that Brian knows J Pink, and likewise, I'm not surprised that Matt knows J Pink because, after all, they're almost neighbors.
Oh, they live in the same
Unsurprising.
state.
They live essentially in the same. Within, I want to say, 25 miles of each other or less. They're close. I mean,
Oh,
they're
okay.
neighbors almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
depending on
Yeah, I mean,
traffic, it's basically a 15-minute drive.
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's a 15-minute.
Well,
Yeah,
good.
and of course me, I'm weird because I'm thousands of miles away, but then I remember little details.
Okay. Well, that's all we had for the
Yeah.
show. I just wanted to do something a little unique, a little interesting, something different. Let's all give J Pink a hand for being a good sport. It was he did a good job.
Yay! Thank you, John.
We need to give J Pink some more love on the show. So
I know.
hope
And every time we
hope it was-
do, like sometimes he'll just kick us off in the middle of us talking.
Do
You'll find yourself disconnected.
How mad I was when I couldn't do anything to Shaddox when he was sitting there like stroking my ego at the beginning of all this. I always
Oh, you
mute
don't like
May or Matt or kick them, drop their call when they're doing
Oh.
the same stuff.
Oh, you don't like
Yeah, he
Yeah, I don't
he
like
always
it.
he always cuts their audio. He always cuts
Makes
their
me feel
audio. I mean-
uncomfortable.
well, I
Aw.
empathize. I'm the same way. Yeah. I really am. I don't like that at all, to be honest. So I'll try not to do that again. But I
Get
can
over
tell.
it.
I can tell from my
Both
show,
of you.
knowing what I have to put into my show. I can tell the amount of effort. And to you, it might be just second nature. Now you just do it without even thinking. But I know there's a lot of work that you do in the background. So,
There is
I
so much
I
damn
greatly appreciate that now
organization
that I know.
involved. Yeah.
All right. So now let's go on to some turf stuff. If you guys want to talk about some turf stuff.
All right.
You ready, Domain?
Yeah, I'm ready. Well, where do I want to start here?
Oh, before I
So-
forget,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Since I'm on here and I have absolutely nothing to promote, I'm going to promote something. go to my YouTube channel, sign up, Turfgrass Epistemology. Go to my podcast and sign up for my podcast. I release podcasts. The show is released on podcast the next day as soon as YouTube processes the video, which for some reason seems to take like 12 hours to process. I don't know why. But I load the podcast. It's gaining a little bit more attention. People are starting to watch it. I don't really do a whole lot on Twitter, but you can go to Twitter. And at the end of this month, don't forget, I'll be in North Florida for the Sports Field Managers Association. I'll be giving a lecture on Monday about soil testing. If you want to learn about more about soil testing, come on Monday. And then I'm going to give a lecture with Ryan on is it Thursday morning or something about a little bit about nitrogen sources. He'll be talking about one topic, and then in the end of the 2-hour event, or the last half of the 2-hour event, I'll be talking about nitrogen sources and how to blend fertilizer in the most economical way for turf grasses. So before I forget, that's my plugs for the show.
What platforms are your podcasts on?
They're on every podcast that you would ever get. I load things onto a central podcast. What do they call it? A podcast something, whatever they call
There's
it.
links to the Spotify, the Apple, and the Google
Okay.
RSS in the video description here, in the show description. So
You can go to turfgrassepistemology.podbean.com. I think that's the website. Honestly, I don't know. And then it has everything on there, all the links. But most people just go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. There's a really good chance that it's already on there. You just search for Turfgrass Epistemology and it'll pop up. I'm really actually pleasantly surprised that so many people download them and watch them. I see the statistics come up. I'm like, well, there's several hundred downloads, and so I mean, it's worth my time, I guess, to load them up there. I guess people enjoy listening to it in the background or whatever. So I'll continue to do that as long as people continue to use it. So okay.
How about
I'm
this?
sorry, Ryan. I
If
didn't
we
mean to
can
interrupt
get
you.
if we can get an additional 100 subscribers for Shaddox, he will show up to our next live meetup. No
Is
pressure.
that in my contract?
It's in the
it
mail.
is now.
Okay.
or Dr. Shaddox.
We're just going to go ahead and say that. We'll see what shakes out on the other end. But for the time being, just assume I'm lying. But we'll see what we can work out. That 100 new subscribers, and Shaddox will show up to the next live meetup.
Or he'll just show up for the.
He is really uncomfortable. Look at the look on his face.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll just show
yeah.
up for the heck of it because
really
I can guarantee you that at this meetup we don't talk very much about grass. Okay, because it's essentially a party that starts on about Tuesday or Wednesday and it keeps on going until Friday morning. Seriously.
Well, yeah. I'll say this. I can make exceptions under very rare circumstances, but my head's hitting the pillow almost every night at 10 p.m. Come hell or high water. I mean, it's 10 p.m. now, and I'm trying to stay awake. So
man,
I make exceptions for some rules, but and I don't drink alcohol, so I'm not very fun.
Really?
Honestly, I'm not that. Yeah, I don't.
Really,
drink.
you're a total non-drinker as well. Wow.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm surprised.
I'm one of the most boring, regular, scheduled people you'll ever meet. I don't do much nowadays. Once I got married, I changed everything, and I'm totally just routine and dad and all that stuff. Now, the people who knew me before I was married don't call in. Okay, that was a totally different life.
Understood. I mean, thankfully, the people that knew me in my teens and 20s, they're mostly dead, so I don't have to worry.
There's something about the water or something in Hawaii or something about the Pacific area where I've known several people over the years, and some of them quite well, and they're 50 years old and they look like they're 25 or 30. I'm like, what do you guys put in the water down there? I don't know what it is. It's the sun or the activity or what, but you guys look 20 years younger than you normal. I shouldn't say you guys, but the ones that I've known always look much younger than they actually are.
It's because Matt can attest to this. He says Asian don't raisin.
Okay, all right. Never heard that one. That's nice.
And for example, you know what you said about people looking at least 20 years younger?
Mm,
You're not wrong because this year I will literally be 52.
52. Yeah. Well, good
Mhm.
for you.
But I don't look it.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I'm Bogarting the show here, but it's 10 o'clock
No, you're
and
not.
we haven't said anything about turf. So let's do something fun about turf, I guess. What's
All
up,
right,
Ryan? What do
let's
you got?
go. All right. So the goal here, again, not tonight, but collectively, for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it takes,
Mm,
is to actually take those critical thinking skills and apply them and build out a fully fledged, pest control, weeds, diseases, insects, and fertilizer plan for the average lawn care company in some particular city, right? It's hard to build one out that's going to, touch everything and hit all those things. And we might actually take it a couple different directions, especially when we get to pest control and say, okay, hey, this night we're going to do something and pretend it's in Atlanta. And, the next week we might do and say, hey, this is in Boston, Massachusetts, something like that. But
okay.
let's just talk about from your perspective. I think the angle that we were trying to get to is um, making conscientious fertilizer choices based on value and also from a standpoint of some of the work that you did on the slow release paper there in Florida and how that might apply to some of the choices and thoughts because I know there are situations that you might say that potentially a slow release product may offer some value, and there's other ones that don't, and try and maybe walk through that a little bit. So I don't want to bogart your upcoming shows, but
No, matter.
with the goal in
Whatever.
mind, let's start with if you were sitting across the table from a lawn care person, and the vast majority of our folks are either professionals in smaller companies, say 10 employees or less,
Hmm.
or very advanced homeowners. So let's think about it from the lawn care aspect, from the professional aspect. Got to turn a profit, right? Has to be
Yeah.
consistent, scalable, repeatable, all those types of things.
Hmm.
So let's start this critical thinking process around we have a set of choices right out in front of us. We have distributors, we have things that are being offered to us and at different price points and things like that. So, what are some critical thinking, evaluative criteria that you'd start to look at? Let's start there when I'm looking
Well,
at
okay.
the product you're
Yeah.
offering.
I think the first step one is, I mean, this is coming off the top of my head. I have no
Mhm.
notes on this. Okay. I'm just coming off the
Good.
top of my head. This is all my opinion. I think step one is to acknowledge that your program is not perfect. No matter what program you're running, there's almost always room for improvement. If you're unable to acknowledge that, it's going to be difficult for me to have a meaningful conversation with you, to have some sort of discourse that's going to be beneficial to you. I haven't yet found a single program that is flawless. Okay. Doesn't mean yours isn't, but there's a pretty good chance it's not. So, in other words, there's a pretty good chance that whatever program you're on, there's room for improvement. So let's start there. As long as you're willing, it's kind of like, therapy. You first have to acknowledge you have a problem. First
Sure.
acknowledge that you have room for improvement. And so if you're willing to acknowledge and say, hey, you know what, I'm skeptical about this, or I think I can stretch this dollar a little further on this. If you're able to do that, then we can have a conversation. So I would say that's step one. Step two would probably be something like, um, either opting in or making decisions only if you have a good reason. So if you're going to start in a fertilizer program, there's usually only one type of person that comes to me, and that is, this is the program I'm using. How can I make it better? Or what can I do? I don't usually
Mhm.
get the other people. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I want to start from scratch. I would actually hope that that's the way we end up going. In other words, In other words, start from scratch and opt in to products rather than start from some Heinz 57 program and start opting out of stuff. That's
Mhm.
harder to do. It's much more difficult to do. So if you start from nothing and you start opting in to products, what criteria do you use for inclusion? And for me, the criteria is, do you have a good reason? Is there evidence to support that reason? And I'm speaking specifically of fertilizers, but you can do the same thing with any
Sure.
management practice. And that is, is there any evidence to indicate that we can produce the product that we're selling for less money than what we're doing? Or what's the least expensive nitrogen source, for example, that will result in the product that I'm trying to sell? It's that simple,
Mhm.
basically, at the end of the day. So if you're selling a yard or you're selling a football field, or when I say selling, I mean you're producing a product,
Sure.
or your job is the fairway, or your job is a sod production, or whatever the case is. At the end of the day, well, let's use I don't know. Let's just use a football field or whatever. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
we're trying to produce a product that is acceptable to the coaches and players and safe and meets NFL standards. And there's different categories of athletics have different standards, but you're
Mhm.
trying to produce that product. There's a there's an infinite way of getting there from nitrogen sources and P and K and all these things. My criteria for inclusion of a product is, what is the least expensive source that we can use to achieve that goal? It's basically it's no more complicated than that. So
Well, let me
that's
ask
a
you this. That is a good starting point. Now, the other thing that I think is a starting point is, and I'm curious because of the evidence-based approach and I will call it zero based budgeting or program building approach, right? Whereas I'm not going to peel things off of an existing program, right? But rather, I'm going to start and justify everything that goes in and make a program out
Mhm,
of that. So,
mhm.
what would be on the other side, the non-negotiables? Let me ask it this way: the non-negotiables of things that you should not have in there, right, or cannot have in there, and or would you identify as just absurdly wasteful?
Well,
JPEG,
when
is it
you ask,
absurd?
It's absurd.
Did it's all right. Absurdly
somebody told, I
wasteful
guess it
things.
was J Pink texted me, or we talked at some point, and he said, "Well, you're using that sound clip." And what are you talking about? What sound clip? And he he sent he sent me some link, and I watched it. I'm like, oh my god, hey, everything's
It's
fair game.
absurd. It's absurd.
It's
It's absurd.
great. It's actually the tone and intonation in your voice, just the absolute disgust and ridicule that you have, and I can't remember what it was that you were talking about,
I
but,
remember. I remember. I
I
remember. It's
bet you
very.
do.
I was telling. I'll just
Oh,
say it
that
right
was
here.
the
So
guy that copped your paper. He was the guy that copped your paper, right?
no, 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 no. He and I are cool, but just so we're clear
Oh,
here, he
that's
and I are
fine, yeah,
fine. I
yeah.
told him to, hey, give me a call. Let's work it out. He signed it up. He and I met. He paid the fee. I returned the fee. Everything's good there. I don't want to start anything there anymore. So we're good
Oh,
there.
no, no,
Right.
no, no, no. I
This
get
was
it.
another guy where he was saying, well, we're putting out fertilizer, but don't put it out too early because you don't want the turf grass to take it up too early. I mean, how freaking ridiculous is that? I mean, you have to
Wow.
understand. I
Drink the
am.
alcohol, but don't get hammered yet, please.
Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. I mean, it's just it's you have to understand my let's let me describe my filter, my lens. My entire professional career has been centered around helping turfgrass enterprises succeed, whether it's a homeowner, whether it's a business, uh, fertilizer, whatever it is. I'm here to communicate, to generate evidence and to communicate that evidence as best I can to the turfgrass industry so that we can succeed. We can get better at what we do. And for years I've dedicated my life and my career to doing this. And I sometimes think, oh, I'm having an impact, I'm doing well. And then I see a YouTuber with, 500,000 views saying stuff like that. And I realize I'm not doing anything. He's having much more of an impact than I ever have in the last 20 years on one video, and he's saying stuff that's completely contrary to the body of evidence. It's
It's absurd.
extremely depressing to me. Yeah, it's absurd. That's
We
that's
feel
the
the same
reason
way.
I get animated. I get animated because it's like, man, how many years do I have to put in before I feel like I'm actually making a difference? Because you get going, you get going, you get going, and all of a sudden, some somebody on YouTube puts out a video, and or somebody on wherever the case is, and some of these YouTube videos on turf have millions of views. And I'm just like, oh my,
They
and that's
do.
fine. That's fine. Hey, do it. Get your money. Get capitalize on it, no problem. My interest is to communicate what is true. I want to do the best I can to generate the model of turfgrass science based upon the evidence, based upon what is reality and true. Not capitalizing on misinformation or just outright lies. That's where I
Mhm.
get really frustrated, So I just, anyway. So where would I
But
start? The question was,
yeah,
where would I start about end sources or something? What was it? I'm sorry. Or
the question
what would
was,
I
what would
rule
you
out? What would I
exclude?
rule out?
Yeah, like off the
Yeah,
cuff, no
yeah,
questions about it, non-negotiable. We're not going to do
yeah,
that, or things that people are maybe doing often that you
yeah,
see, in professional
yeah,
lawn care that you should probably think about that because the evidence suggests otherwise.
yeah. That's good. Oh, thanks for giving me the platform to answer that question. There are. I would prefer to rule everything out and then opt in for evidence. It makes the whole process easier. It makes this whole
But how do
process.
you help people
But if you,
understand and maybe frame some things that they probably do that you see that are oft used
yeah,
techniques,
I'm with you.
products,
I'm,
practices, things
I
like that.
got.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm okay. I mean, I get it. I just want to make sure we're clear. Zero everything out and just opt in when you have evidence. But if you're going to but like I said at the beginning, no one comes to me with that question. Usually it's, I have this program, how can I remove things and make it better or whatever. It's just a very similar question to what you're asking. So certain things that can be eliminated. And when I'm speaking here, I understand it's coming from Dr. Shaddox or whatever. I get that. But I'm going to speak pragmatically. So anybody scientifically wants to throw some stuff up and be, picky about it, forget it. I'm speaking pragmatically. I get there's some rare case on some other planet in another distant universe that this could possibly happen. I get that. Okay. But pragmatically speaking, these are things that can be eliminated. Almost, as you can tell from my last month on my channel, almost every form of granular iron can be eliminated entirely. It's certainly iron
Amen.
sulfate. Yeah, certainly iron
Amen.
sulfate. Definitely iron oxide for sure. Eliminate it completely. And you guys say, well, it's not that much. Or a lot of times, the problem is, well, how do I get it eliminated? How do I remove it? You have to go find a blender or find a bag that doesn't have it in it. I get that, but is it really going to save me that much money? Well, if you're not concerned about removing it because it's only going to save you 25, 30 cents a bag or whatever, well, then just give me the 25 or 30 cents a bag and I'll take it if you're not that concerned about it. I mean, people price bags, you should be pricing by the pound in, really. Price per bag is, to me, useless. But price per pound of nitrogen or price per acre of nitrogen, however you want to do it, but based upon the amount of N is really the fair and balanced way to do it. But anyway, remove all remove all iron. Sorry, remove all iron from the fertilizer. There are some rare cases. I get that where chelated granular sources may have some chance, and there are even very, very rare cases where iron sulfate might do something, but they're exceedingly, exceedingly rare. So eliminate iron completely. Anything else in terms of micronutrients that could be possibly valuable to you are so rarely encountered, you might as well just eliminate all micronutrients. There's a case to be made for manganese. I get that, but I mean the chances of you seeing a response to manganese are probably equal to the negative responses that you would see from manganese. In other words, you might see a positive response, possibly. I've found it. I've documented a positive response to manganese, but I've also documented equal responses or negative responses to manganese. So you know, I'm not going to argue over manganese. It's possible you could see a response, but I would eliminate it. And so, what else is left in the micronutrients? Boron, zinc, molybdenum, copper. You're not going to see a response to that stuff. There's almost no chance, pragmatically speaking, there's almost zero chance you're going to see a response to the granular forms of those micronutrients. Almost never. In the foliar
Hmm.
lines, in the foliar lines, there's a extremely high probability of seeing a response to foliar iron as long as it's soluble. There's also a decent chance of seeing a response to foliar manganese. Not great, but it's not so low that I would eliminate it. I wouldn't put it on the automatically eliminate list, is what you're asking me for. So iron and manganese, there's a pretty good chance manganese and very high chance of iron. Almost no chance of seeing a response to magnesium. Almost no chance of seeing a response to any other micronutrients. Almost never. So what my point is that you could eliminate all those micronutrients, full stop, from granular and foliar. And then if you see something happen that's a little off color, or you see some documented case, then you can add it in, no problem. And those micronutrient deficiencies, almost every nutrient deficiency, is very rapidly overcome following the application of that element. Take phosphorus, for example. If you have a phosphorus deficiency, it's very rapidly cured by applying phosphorus. Matter of days, a week maybe. Okay, it's not like the turf is going to die because it's a lack of phosphorus under normal deficiencies. And if you're so severe, that's maybe a little bit different. But under normal deficiencies, nutrients at the application of nutrients will rapidly cure whatever you're seeing in terms of physiological deficiencies. Okay,
Dr.
so I
Shaddox,
would
can I
say,
push on you about magnesium?
well,
So
sure, feel free.
I,
Remember, you're not
I,
pushing back against me; you're pushing back against the body of evidence.
the number of people, myself included, that have heard the old wives' tale of Epsom salt, dissolve it in your sprayer and go spray your lawn, it'll turn it green. I have sprayed several different turf types with magnesium sulfate and have definitively seen a response from that. Is it why would you say that magnesium is highly unlikely to elicit a response?
Because the decades of research following magnesium applications, both granular and foliar, have convinced me that the chances of seeing a response are well less of 5%. Very, very low chance of seeing a response. Now, it's just like sodic soils. You have zero chance of seeing a positive response to following the application of calcium sulfate to a soil that's not sodic. Okay. But if you happen to be in a location where 50% of your lawns are sodic, then you're going to see a high chance, a high probability of seeing a response following calcium sulfate because most of your lawns are sodic. So the reason I'm saying that about magnesium is you might be in some situation that is extremely rare, like sodic soils are very rare, except for in some parts of the United States and in the upper Northwest. But you might be in some strange situation where magnesium is deficient in this particular location for some odd reason. Okay. That could happen.
Magnesium's
But in the literature,
soil pH, does soil pH have an influence over a visual response of applying foliar magnesium?
I didn't understand your question.
So, for instance, I sprayed a fair amount of it when I was in Augusta, Georgia. So we're talking, pretty low pHs there. Do you think soil pH has an influence over whether or not you'll see a visual response from foliar magnesium sulfate?
Well, I mean, within normal pH ranges, probably it has the impact is pretty minimal. But my question to you is, how do you know it's from magnesium? I mean, if you're gonna come to me and say I see a response from magnesium sulfate, I'm gonna come to you and say, how do you know it's from magnesium?
It was the only thing applied.
Magnesium sulfate. How do you know it was from the magnesium?
Because
good point. Good point. Touche.
okay, because likewise, I've seen situations where magnesium sulfate is purported to have a positive, color response on turf and ornamentals. I then push back extremely hard on that, and I asked, "Are you sure it's the magnesium, or are you actually getting a response because you're supplying soluble sulfate?"
Yeah, right. Now, let me
Because
expand that just a little bit here. There's this ongoing for decades sort of, I don't want to say ignorant. It's not ignorant. I mean, I don't say ignorant. That's too strong a word, but just sort of not complete comprehension of the value of ammonium
Mhm.
sulfate. People apply ammonium sulfate and they see this really magnified color, right? Particularly against urea or even in some cases ammonium nitrate, even calcium nitrate,
Mm.
where they see this, man, that's really got dark. And sometimes people think it's because it's a lowering of pH, but you still see the same response even when the pH was already low. And what I'm trying to get people to understand is you're applying two necessary macronutrients in ammonium sulfate, nitrogen and sulfate, and two necessary macronutrients in magnesium sulfate, magnesium and sulfate. To determine whether it's from the magnesium versus the sulfate, you have to use magnesium chloride, or you have to balance out the sulfate with, say, calcium sulfate or something else in the study. So, what I'm saying is, when we properly balance these things out in science, meaning when we go out and we do a study with magnesium, we account for the counter ion. And when we do that, the documented responses from magnesium are nowhere near as common in the literature as you might think. Not that common. Okay. And we're talking magnesium levels in the soil of Malic 3, anywhere above 30 or 40 Malic 3. If you get down in the teens, Matt, well, do you know the soil, the magnesium, Malic 3 magnesium of the soils from the turf grass that you were applying that to? Because if you're down in the teens, and we got another conversation to have.
I honestly cannot
Yeah.
remember, and this was over a decade ago.
Yeah. Well, they may not even been using Malic 3. So who knows? But the Malic 3 uh, magnesium level is not very well established. We don't know for sure what it is. But if I was to give you a number, it's probably somewhere around the 20 to 30 number. So if you're below that value and you're seeing a magnesium deficiency in the turf grass, or you say you've seen a response to magnesium when you applied it, then it's possible there's a magnesium deficiency. But if your magnesium is anywhere near 40, 50 or higher, the chances of you seeing a magnesium response is extremely low. Now, I've documented, as you saw on my channel, or if you haven't watched it, I don't know where it was. It was, right here is 3 days ago. We applied magnesium sulfate to St. Augustine grass over 2 years in 2 locations, and we did see in granular and foliar, and we did see a response to magnesium sulfate even when the soil pH or the soil, magnesium level was greater than 60 or 70. We still saw a response. It was at the very, very end of a 2-year study, and we saw the foliar magnesium sulfate have a little bit of a bump up. So, it can happen. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying that the chances of it happening are pretty low.
And
Conversely,
one more question:
okay.
do you think any of that is turf type dependent? So I always felt like I got the strongest response on centipede grass versus other warm season
Yeah,
turf types.
yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure it is, yeah.
I have to kind of relate my experiences that I often tell people, for the love of God, whatever you do, please do not apply any magnesium sulfate to your soil. I tell them, please don't do it because here locally, our magnesium levels are pushing 150 to 200. All right. I tell people, I don't give a damn who told you to do it, but please don't do it because we have more than enough magnesium. And what has worked for me is application of what's known as micronized sulfur. And what
Micronized
micronized
what?
sulfur is
Oh, sulfur.
sulfur.
Okay.
Micronized sulfur. And micronized sulfur is normally sold as a fungicide and miticide for grapes and fruit trees. However, it's also utilized for direct application as a corrective for sulfur deficiency. So here's the thing about this micronized sulfur. For many years, I've known that applying micronized sulfur to the soil will get a lot of plants greener. because it is addressing the sulfur deficiency. I mean, and that's something that I often have to caution people about because I keep on seeing this in various, magazines and media the public consumes. Everybody is told to apply magnesium sulfate to their plant. I mean, I keep on seeing that. And I tell people, don't do it because if you overdosed on magnesium by application of magnesium sulfate, you can very well create this phenomena that I've seen of displacement of the other cation. And
Yeah.
specifically, you can start to displace potassium and calcium by excessive magnesium application.
Yeah, certainly the application of cations, particularly, double charged cations like magnesium and calcium and so forth can change the concentration of other cations in the soil for sure. But I want to go back, if I may, to what Matt said. Well, I've been putting this out and I saw a response. This happens a lot where, and this is something I'm hesitant to do about showing people how to do this correctly because I don't think they should unless they're trained. But whenever someone's convinced that this happened, I put this out and this happened. It's not easy to explain to them or convince them that what they saw is not what they saw. Okay, let me explain what I'm talking about. Just because the crow or the rooster crowed and the sun came up does not mean that the rooster crowing caused the sun to come up. Does that make sense?
Oh,
And
it makes total sense. It makes total sense. I mean, attribute the correct effect to the correct cause. I mean, that's I guess your point is attribute the correct effect to the correct cause. And this also, I know you've talked about this before about the importance of separating out what you're actually getting a response from, because I remember the first time you came on our show and you put up that little study where you had that sulfur deficiency in the turf grass, right?
Yep.
And that just kind of brought it home to me. And if it were me, Dr. Shaddox, what I probably would have done to tease out the sulfur deficiency is I would have actually have applied micronized sulfur to that plot.
Oh yeah, that would have cured the problem within a day.
Yeah, no confounding, or confusing factors, present, because if somebody puts down potassium sulfate, for example, they can easily say, see, the potassium sulfate made the grass greener, or they put down magnesium sulfate and they say, oh, see, the magnesium sulfate made the grass greener. No, it was the sulfate, the soluble sulfur that did it.
Well,
To be
it may have been. It may have been.
I was trying to magically balance the soil of perfect ratios of calcium to magnesium at the time too. So
You do what?
that was why I was applying so much just magnesium sulfate.
Oh, really?
I could crack the code to growing centipede in Augusta, Georgia, by mysteriously hitting these special ratios.
Oh,
Matt,
really?
do you know what I do to make centipede grass perform for me, Matt?
Stop doing anything to it. Just cut it.
Yeah, basically.
And apply a pound of micronized sulfur per 1,000 square foot per month of growing season.
Yeah, but in Augusta, pHs were already like 5, 5.2, so it wasn't high on my priority list. I was caught up in magic ratios and balancing the soil.
Right. That's
I don't want to go too far away from the other side of the coin on Matt's observation is that I'm not saying that what Matt observed was not from the magnesium. I'm not saying he didn't observe it. I'm not saying it didn't happen because of the magnesium. I'm not saying it did happen because of the sulfate. I'm not saying any of that. I'm simply saying that when someone is convinced that this is what happened, it's very challenging to educate them or teach them about critical thinking skills so that they can come up with the thought process themselves and go, oh, maybe it wasn't that. Because if I tell them it was this or it was that, I could be wrong. I don't know. I wasn't there. And it's not easy for them to accept that from someone else. Usually it's easier for them to accept it if they come up with their own process. So what I'm saying is the other side of the coin is Matt could be right. Maybe he did see a response to magnesium, and it's not my position to refute him and say, nope, you didn't. It wasn't the magnesium. It wasn't that, because I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't apply it. I don't know what you did or didn't do. I have no clue. The only thing, and the reason I'm saying that is because that's the critical thinking process to some degree, is that I have to rely upon the evidence, not anecdotes. And it's the anecdotes that kind of get us bent on the left field, and it really starts to convince us. Okay, I've been going over pH it was on Wednesday when I went over pH, the pH diagram. There's hundreds and hundreds, about thousands of people that are convinced this pH diagram is valid. It's going to take generations to get them off this idea. Okay, that pH diagram is useful. It's not useful. We need to stop using it. But to tell them that isn't going to be near as effective as to teach them the critical thinking skills to come up with the reality, the realization on their own through the scientific literature. This is what the evidence says. It doesn't mean that Matt was wrong, and it doesn't mean that I'm right. It just means that the probability that Matt putting out magnesium sulfate in Augusta, Georgia, and seeing a beneficial turf grass response to the magnesium is probably not very good. But I don't know. He could be right. Like I said, he could be that one location or two locations that's low in magnesium. He has magnesium concentrations in the teens, and he needs to apply magnesium. So I just want to make sure that's clear. I'm not saying you're wrong. Okay, and I'm not saying I'm right. It's the thought process. Oh, I applied another macronutrient with that. How do I know? Right?
I think
That's a
you
missed
highlighted a good point there, that I'm still doing correlation equals causation, right? And that's the fallacy.
Yeah.
So I did not take into account sulfate, which is that's on me, 100%.
In all the 80s through the 70s, in the 80s and the 90s, really, for the majority of our lives, except for the last 20 years, we didn't need to worry about that. You could put all the sulfur you wanted, and it would have never resulted in a response, because there was so much acid rain coming down, the sulfur in the rain. We didn't need to do that anymore. But since we've cleaned it up, the sulfur depositions have plummeted drastically, and sulfur doesn't hang around in the soil like iron does or manganese does. Right? It doesn't stay where it's put. So these depositions over the decades, even though they've been deposited over the decades, doesn't mean they're still there. Since they've been cleaned up, the depositions have been reduced, and the soil sulfur have been reduced. And this is going to be the next major addition to the BMP manuals is the understanding of sulfur deficiencies, because it is so much more prevalent now than it ever really has been in our lifetime. Okay. And I even mean that to you, Ray. Even in your lifetime.
Okay.
You just didn't have to
Dr.
worry about it
Shaddox,
recently.
the interesting thing is that I realize that globally there's been this push to clean up, atmospheric emissions from man-made sources, and so how you can wonder how the heck I am on a dormant volcano and there's no sulfur in the soil, but you know what? It happens, and it is an emergent problem. And actually, I've been aware of this since the 1990s. And what made me aware is, again, I observed the difference between applying nitrogen as urea versus applying nitrogen as AMS.
Yeah.
And I'm very well aware that it's right there on the ammonium sulfate bag on the tag it says 2100-24. And you know what the 24 is, of course. 24%
There's more.
sulfur, right?
There's more sulfur in it than there is nitrogen.
Yeah, there's
So,
more
and a
sulfur
lot
in
of
it.
and,
Yeah.
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 The
And
ironic
so,
thing is a lot of the ammonium sulfate that's generated from Matt probably knows this. At least some of the ammonium sulfate that's generated and used as fertilizers are byproducts of the of the cleaning process itself from the large
right,
towers.
that's
Some of the ammonium we put out comes from those
Thank
towers.
you,
actually,
Honey Pup.
yeah,
Do what?
I know that a lot of the AMS is acquired via the scrubbers used to remove the sulfur dioxide emissions from industrial plants. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
that's the process, is that they capture that and then they
Yeah.
react it, and then it eventually
Mhm.
becomes ammonium sulfate. And so the what we used to get falling out of the sky every time it rained or snowed, guess what? We now got to buy it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's basically back to your question, Ryan, is your interest or whatever. What can we eliminate? I don't see any point in putting out any micronutrients unless you have a documented deficiency that's being shown as a physiological issue from the turf. So if the turf grass itself is showing a physiological deficiency in micronutrients, then I would apply it. Otherwise, I think you can do without it and save that money. When it comes to the other components of granular fertilizer or even liquid fertilizer, I don't think you can completely get rid of magnesium. You probably could be fine. I don't think you could completely get rid of manganese, but probably could, and you'd be fine. Then it comes into the NP and K. So the N, obviously, we're never going to get rid of that really, unless somebody invents some way to create like a clover turf hybrid or something. I mean, that's we're going to have to be applying nitrogen for a while. But a lot of the phosphorus can be eliminated. A lot of it. I definitely would not put it on the do not apply no matter what list. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that in many, many cases, we over apply phosphorus, either applying more than we need. Maybe we need some, but we're applying too much, or we just don't need any and we're still applying it full stop. In fact, I sent out that little thing on Twitter a day or two ago about the phosphorus level, if soil phosphorus level is 0, would you apply phosphorus? And a lot of people will say, yes, I would apply phosphorus. And I'm saying the phosphorus test is wrong. If your turf grass is fine and the phosphorus level is 0, the turf grass test or the turf test, soil test is wrong. So there's this concept, again, this indoctrination, I think, of years of doing the same thing the same way. We applied phosphorus, we applied, potassium, and I see these responses. Well, if you're applying it with nitrogen, how do you know? How do you know you're getting the value or the response that you think you're seeing from the phosphorus when you're applying it with nitrogen, or from the potassium when you're applying with nitrogen? So I'm not putting phosphorus on the do not apply list. That's far from what I'm saying. I'm just simply saying that we can probably do by with much, much less, and in some cases, complete elimination of phosphorus. And when it comes to potassium, is the same holds true. You have a very little chance of seeing any beneficial response from applying potassium. I'm not saying take it off the or put it on the no apply list. I'm not saying that at all. There's clearly cases where you need it, but I think we over apply phosphorus and potassium. We could do by and produce the same product, like the beginning of the conversation tonight. We're producing a product, we're selling a product. How can we do that for the least amount of money and gain the most margin? That's what that's what I would deem to be the most effective program. How can I make the most money back from to produce the product? And I think we can make more money by applying less phosphorus, less potassium, and we're still going to produce the same product that we were applying before in many cases. In the cases where you might not, let's say you do need to apply the same level of phosphorus, or you lower it down, or you lower the potassium down. You go, whoops, I lowered it too much. Recovery from phosphorus deficiency is very fast. Recovery from potassium deficiency is fast. It's not in the matter of months. It's a matter of days or maybe a week. So in other words, you can lower that line down quite a bit and probably not see anything change in your turf grass. And if you do, add a little phosphorus back in the blend. The next application, add a little potassium back in the blend. Next application, be fine. So if we're talking about efficient programs, turfgrass programs, that's sort of a bullet point approach. I don't know if you were able to. I don't know if you had to step away, Ron, or not, but
No, you're good.
uh,
And so on that front of, I know you've talked about a bit about this, not a bit, but you've talked about this at length, some of these topics on your own channel. But in the in a shortly framed answer, what are the
mhm.
situations that do warrant including phosphorus specifically, potassium specifically in a commercial lawn care program?
Yeah. So now you're just lobbing these softballs up for me to just knock out of the park. We I like these are really easy questions. We need to do this on my channel
Yeah, I
too.
mean,
So these are
well,
fun.
we can do that, and I mean,
Yeah.
you put me on the spot with all the J Pink answers. I gotta
Um,
return the favor here.
so here, here's my take, and I get the other side of the coin. So I'm going to say this, and I get the other side. Okay, we can discuss the other side too. I'm not in favor of applying any element unless I have a good reason. Period.
Mhm,
It would be earth shattering for me to change my position on that. If somebody came to me and showed me evidence that my position is flawed, it would change my world. Okay, so what I'm saying is I'm very convinced that this is the correct approach. Add things in when you have a good reason. So the question is, what are the good reasons to include phosphorus and potassium? For me, the first priority and the where your energy should be focused is on the turf grass response. And I get the mass, applications of fertilizers to, 400 units. I get it. We can't look at every lawn, da, 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 and we have to look at individual. I understand that. Okay, I get that.
it's
But
fair.
you need to, in my view, look at, well, if you can classify lawns by young and old lawns, sometimes they differ. If you have some sort of delineation between these lawns where you know that this newer community with newer soils and newer turf grasses requires more nutrients than this older community, then it's easy to separate out. If not, you need to kind of look at your overall portfolio and determine, do I need are 50% or more of my lawns deficient in phosphorus? Okay, well, if so, then maybe we should include phosphorus in the whole program. You see what I'm saying? But
Mhm,
if you only have 5 or 10% of the lawns that are deficient in phosphorus and you're paying for phosphorus and applying it to the other 90, that's an area for improvement. Okay, when I say deficient, I mean the turf grass is showing a deficiency in phosphorus. It's showing a purpling of the leaf blade. And you have to
mhm,
understand, this does happen, but it's not that common. I mean, I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen, it happens. It happens far more frequently with phosphorus than it does with potassium, that's for sure. So it can
yeah,
occur. But if your turf grasses are growing fine and everybody's happy, I don't see a whole lot of evidence to support including phosphorus and paying for phosphorus to put it out. I just don't see that. So the logistics of commercial lawn care, it's company to company. I mean, if you have 2,000 units versus 50, we're dealing with two different scales here. Okay, I mean, it's not a one size fit all for every lawn care company. I get that.
mhm,
So we're gonna have to address that on a company by company situation. But in general, I wouldn't apply any phosphorus unless there is a documented phosphorus deficiency in the turf grass, and you can take a soil test and determine whether or not it's phosphorus, or you can spray out some phosphorus and you'll see a response in 3 or 4 days. It's not going to take that long. Soldot's done this a number of times. He goes out there and
oh yeah,
sprays a pea on his turf grass, and you'll see a big pea out there. And it's not like it's months later; it's just a week later. You'll see a pea out there. So, the point is that it's easy to document, it's easy to diagnose, and it's easy to alleviate. It's rapid. Nutrient deficiencies, particularly phosphorus and potassium, it's not a cataclysmic event. It's not like, oh my God, the potassium's low and I'm going to lose 500 customers because of potassium. That doesn't have, that's not the case. You might lose 500 customers for something else, but it's not because potassium was deficient. If the potassium is deficient, add in about, let's say you should use 4600, just say it straight up 4600. The next application, the next round you do, just split it with K and apply a 30015 or whatever. You see what I'm saying? Apply half the rate of nitrogen apply let's say you apply 1 pound of N, you apply 1 or a half a pound of K, put it out, and you're done. It'll respond quickly. The odds on you seeing a potassium deficiency are so remote. It's embarrassing to even talk
Well,
about. You're just not going to see a
well,
potassium deficient. It's very rare, unless
see,
you're in 100% sand soils or low CC soils and you're high rainfall. I mean, I was in South Florida where it's beach sand and we're getting 65 inches of rain a year. Our potassium is in the 20s, and I still couldn't find a potassium deficiency down there. I mean, that's the worst. That's one of the worst case scenarios you can get. Hot, wet, rain, sand, and low retention soils. And I still couldn't get the soils, the turf grass, to get low enough to see a potassium deficiency. In fact, Dr. Snyder and Cesar did that study down there, and they intentionally leached the soil with water and removed the tissue for a year just to get the soil low enough such that the turf grass would actually show a potassium deficiency. They had to do it on purpose. It's
It had
not
to be
easy to see
intentional,
you have to
right? It had
intentionally
to
do
be
something screwy. And again, I'm talking about the general case. Just like I mentioned the sodic soils. I'm never gonna see a response with sodic reclamation in Florida because there's no sodic soils in Florida. So, I'm talking about in general, you have to go to that. If you happen to be that one lawn that has sodic soils, then so be it. If you happen to be that one lawn that has very, very low K, or that one location in South Carolina that has very, very low K, then that's different. I'm talking about sort of in general, okay?
in general, yeah. And
Yeah.
I was listening with great interest, for example, on your position on pH management. I was listening to that very with great interest because here's where and why I would alter pH. My purpose for a reason for altering pH is specifically to liberate certain cations. And the cations that I would want to liberate, for example, are calcium. And because when you liberate calcium, then I don't need to apply gypsum because I also know that gypsum has rather limited solubility and mobility in soil. You can spread that and you'll still see it on the soil surface months later. It hasn't gone down. I rather solubilize and mobilize existing calcium in the soil. And I'm speaking to that condition of needing to reclaim a sodic soil because, at least in my area, a sodic soil is often high calcium as well. I've got all the calcium I need in that soil. Why would I need to spread gypsum on top of an already calcium rich soil when I've got all I need already there?
Well, you might be conflating two things there, Ray. I mean, you can have high calcium in a sodic soil. It's not the calcium that we're using to reclaim sodic soils, it's the sulfate.
Not necessarily. It's the displacement of ions.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter if you displace it. If it can't bind with sulfate and be leached out, it's still going to stay in the soil. It's the sulfate, it's the solubility of sulfate bind with sodium. It's that sodium sulfate solubility
Mm-hmm.
is why it's able to bind and be leached out. And it doesn't occur with sodium carbonate. So
Okay.
it's the
And
counter ion. It is the displacement of ions from the calcium, but it's just
you're
it's
familiar
also the counter
with
ions.
you're familiar with how I frequently use alternative acids to achieve that solubility.
Well, you can use yeah. I mean, I don't know what you're using for an acid, but you can use acids to increase the solubility.
Yeah.
But I was just
Yeah,
speaking
because I
about the need for sulfate. It's not just the calcium. High calcium can and will exist in sodic soils. That's very common, and it's not going to do anything in terms of the alleviation of the sodium because the sodium is still going to remain in the root zone. It's
because by
only
the way,
when another anion comes in that can bind with sodium that has a different solubility at that
Mhm.
specific pH that can then bind and then be leached through the root zone that you would see an
Because,
alleviation
by the way,
of the sodium.
do you know what sodium compound is extremely soluble in water? Extremely soluble and leachable. Sodium citrate.
Okay.
Okay? Sodium
What do you use
citrate.
that for?
No, what I'm talking
What do you
about
use
is
sodium
I
citrate for?
generate. That is the
Citric acid?
ion that I'm leaching. Yeah, citric acid. That's how I typically rapidly correct sodic soil. Is I flush with citric acid.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. I haven't really looked into that. I don't know how that would work, but maybe it would. Yeah, I don't know much about how citric acid would bind with sodium and do that. I'd have to look into it, but
Well, it's
okay, I hear what you're
because
saying.
citric. It's because citric acid, when you put that on a soil like that, what does it do? It forms sodium citrate extremely quickly with whatever sodium carbonate or sodium bicarbonate is present in that soil. Am I right? The
Well,
reaction happens fast.
yeah. Let's assume that that's true. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But let's assume it's true. How much would that cost
Mm-hmm.
relative to using gypsum instead?
How much would that cost?
I mean, if you're going to alleviate a
Okay.
sodic soil, if that's
Mm-hmm.
your intention is to alleviate a sodic soil,
Mm-hmm.
how would applying citric acid be more? We're talking about a cost effective program. That's what we're talking about tonight. Developing a program that's cost effective. How would using citric acid be more favorable cost wise than using gypsum to achieve the same goal?
Time and labor. Time and labor, Dr. Shaddox.
Okay.
Time, labor, and transport of materials. You see where I'm getting at?
The volume of he's saying the volume of gypsum required to complete that process versus citric acid. I think that's what he's saying.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, because I personally have had egg on my face trying to reclaim sodic soil with gypsum. Extremely disappointed with the results that I got when doing what people told me to do and apply gypsum.
Okay.
I mean, I had to call bullshit on the whole thing because it didn't work. It didn't work, okay? I mean,
Okay.
whereas I flush with a pound of citric acid per 1,000 square foot, and I get correction of the issue.
Okay.
And that correction is in the form of how shall I say, a rather distinctive visual response. You can see changes in the turf grass and the plants. And they're positive changes. They're good changes. Whereas pallets of gypsum failed to achieve that positive response. Where I get more out of 50 pounds of food grade anhydrous citric acid. So that's just my thought on it. And of course, if we want to talk about actually generating sodium sulfate out of our sodium cations, then in that case, I go directly to sulfuric acid. I go directly to sulfuric.
Back to this plan, right? This cost effective plan. Dr. Shax, let me ask you this. You kind of alluded a little bit to this, but to make sure we kind of complete the circle here,
Mm-hmm.
if I was a lawn care operator, and again, the evidence suggested, whether it be visual or through a soil test or both, that I have, healthy turf, right, visually, or I have sufficient levels of phosphorus and potassium, right? Okay,
No, I'm
let
not
me see.
saying that.
What's that? No,
No,
what?
I'm not saying that. I'm not
What? You're not.
saying one or the other. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay, what are you saying?
I don't. I'm saying I don't give two flips what your soil test values are unless you have a turf grass problem. I don't care.
Okay. So visually.
If
Okay.
you
So only
if you don't
visually.
have a turf grass problem or you don't have a pre-existing condition,
Hmm.
what do I care what your numbers are? I don't care. I think people have this concept that we should be taking soil tests all the time, and we should be looking at our values and our numbers all the time and seeing how they change all the time. And then the second something gets out of whack, they go out there and they try to throw a bunch of stuff at it. Meanwhile, it's fine. I mean, it's fine. We don't have that much confidence in these values, guys and girls. The phosphorus number somewhere probably between 10 and 20. But Sol.'s seen numbers down in sixes and well, not sixes, sevens.
Hmm.
Okay. There's values greater than 20 that are deficient or insufficient. Okay. Sometimes we need greater than that value of 20 in some rare situations. But I do not in any way want to condone the application of particularly phosphorus, but also calcium or potassium simply by looking at a number on a soil test.
Okay. So
We
fair
we
enough.
we
So then,
don't we don't pay our bills on soil test values. We pay our bills on producing a product that is turf. That's what we pay our bills on, and that's what we should keep focused on. The soil test is a tool that can be used occasionally to help diagnose problems with our product, and our product is turf.
so the question I was going to get to then is this: is what would be help people understand, right, from a plant performance standpoint? Is this if okay? Visually, we see no need to apply. All right, and I'm with you there. I hear what you're saying. And if they just apply to that particular case, that there's no problem, nitrogen only, right?
Mhm,
I think that
mhm.
people maybe have a misconception that the turf is ultimately going to fail. It's going to crash and burn.
Mhm.
Whatever.
Oh, I believe you.
What would
I'm with you
happen?
100%. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. That's probably exactly what they think. This can't
Uh huh.
possibly get by with just nitrogen, can it? There's no way. I'm putting out NP and K. I'm putting out whatever. I'm putting out 15, 5, 15 for the last several years.
Complete
It's
fertilizer.
certain.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need this extra K for this winter stress and this summer stress and all this other stress. I just can't possibly get by with just nitrogen. Yes, it can. It can get by with just nitrogen. Very, very fine. And I'm not talking about cases where there's documented deficiencies. If there's documented deficiencies, we have elements to cure those deficiencies. But in many cases, applying urea, ammonium sulfate, sulfur coated urea, get you by just fine. You don't need to go out there and do all this other, P and K and micronutrients and stuff unless you have a deficiency in those elements. And the deficiency is very rapidly cured in many, many cases. It's not like I'm going to get deficient. It's going to take me 4 months to grow out of that. It's usually not the way it is. It's usually something that can be remedied very quickly if there's ever any issues.
So now,
So,
okay. So then, taking that taking that next leap. Okay.
yeah.
So I do see issues, right? Whether
Mm,
I'm coming into a new situation, and we can talk about that. I think we talked a little bit about that on our previous show. But let's say that I have a
yeah.
lawn that I've been maintaining for a while,
Yeah.
couple, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, and I do notice something. Hey, something's not right. This isn't responding the same way it did to nitrogen only applications. What would be the
Mm.
process to then troubleshoot? Let's use that word, right? Or
Well,
identify the problem. How would you go about that?
yeah. Well, I guess it just depends. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to think. I would need to think like from somebody else's perspective. I think. I mean, I can tell you how I do it, but how I do it won't work for
Sure.
most people because they don't do what I do for a living. Um,
Okay.
but if you are applying nitrogen and it's growing fine, and suddenly, one season you're out there applying nitrogen and it doesn't grow fine, or something's not looking right, or whatever the case might be. Where do you go? What sort of priorities do you check
Mhm.
off? I guess.
Mhm.
And I had somewhere. I don't know if I still have it. I had a dichotomous key that I use. I have a dichotomous key that I use. If I would have known you asked that question, I would have had it ready to go. That I kind of
Mm.
use to check off. And so the first thing I look at when I show up at a facility, if there's a problem and they're applying something, is I look at the water. Okay, I look to see if there's any trees. I look to see what side of the turf grass the tree is growing. If it's growing on the north side of the lawn or the south side of the lawn. Is it a 2-story house on the south side of the lawn, or is it on the north side of the lawn? Is the stadium, 100 feet high and crammed in tight like Florida Field, or is it spread all over creation like the Tennessee Field? In other words, where's the shade? Where's the shadows? Is there anything that I need to be aware of regarding light? So water, light. There's not much I can do about temperature, but I need to be aware of the temperature. I mean, am I looking at this facility in November in North Florida on Bermuda grass, or am I looking at it in November in Tennessee on bluegrass or something? I mean, I'm looking at
Sure.
seeing what is going on with the temperature. So I look at these issues first that are unrelated to nutrients. They're more related to just general plant health than anything else. Okay, so that's what I look at when I'm applying nitrogen. All of a sudden, something goes off. Something's not looking right. I don't look at another nutrient first. That's not my approach. I
What
look
would
at
then?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Keep in mind, guys. Just let's put these things in perspective. About 94%. It depends on the plant, but 93 to 95% of the plant is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that don't come from fertilizers. Okay. They come from the air and from water. Okay, they don't come from something you're applying to the soil or to the plant. So we're fidgeting with about 4 to maybe 6 or 7% of what's in the plant when we apply fertilizers. Okay, it's a very small percentage when you look at the grand scheme of the plant. So when I'm looking at problems, I want to look at that 95%, and that comes from water, light, and temperature, or pests. That's what I want to look at first. So if I check all that off, if you want to go down those roads, we can go down the road. So let's say I checked all that off, and then I want to start looking at nutrients. Then in that case, oftentimes I will take a soil test, and I'll ask specifically for the lab to give me sulfur because it doesn't usually come on a standard soil test. I'll take a soil test, and in the meantime, I won't just do that. I will take a soil test and I'll send that off to the lab and ask for sulfur. I'll do that, but in the meantime, I'll continue to triage the situation to troubleshoot the situation. Like I said in the past, I used to have these little 1-gallon, tiny little pump up sprayers I'd keep in my truck, and one of them had phosphoric acid, and one of them had KCl in it. One of them had magnesium chloride in it or something. Whatever I wanted to spray out. And I would just go out in that little area and spray out a known volume that had a known concentration on the area of interest that just had P in it, that just had K in it, or just had magnesium in it, right? Or, whatever element I thought might be the issue. You can get down on your hands and knees. And this is what I used to do when I was younger. I'd get down on my hands and knees, start looking at the leaves and trying to figure out which leaf is chlorotic and all these things. I'm like, it's too much work. Just get a bottle and spray it out. And in 3 or 4 days, if you see something happen, there's a good chance that it was deficient in that element. That's more of a non-scientific approach to it, but that's what I do nowadays. Well, I haven't done it in years, so I've been out of the business, but that's what I used to do.
Hey,
So that's how I would go about when I applied nitrogen. And I didn't see anything. I'd start troubleshooting it in that fashion, in that order: water, light, temperature, pests, and then send off a soil test. Maybe start looking at other elements in the tissue. I'm sorry, Ray, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Okay, I've heard of that procedure where you have test solutions of known elements, and you literally make test patches. And you know what? I've done that too. I have done that as well, because that is just so useful. And of course, me being me, I'm looking at the turf anyway close up, because I also want to detect any kind of disease, insect pest, or nematode damage. I need to also rule that out before just saying, oh, we need to apply XYZ nutrients. I mean, I do that too. And I think the whole point that needs to be made is that a lot of issues with turf grass appearance actually have nothing to do with nutrients, and they have to do with some other factor.
In
And
many
the
cases,
reason
Ray,
why
you're
I can,
right. Yeah.
yeah, because the only time I've seen nutrient issues created or needing to be addressed
Mm.
is in instances where the turf grass is on what I call the supermodel diet.
Pretty lean. Bulimic.
Okay, well,
You ever seen a turf grass plant smoke a Marlboro?
Okay, Dr. Shaddox, you said the word correctly, because that situation where I see deficiencies are where 100% of all clippings and leaf litter are constantly removed, month
Yeah,
after
we
month,
got, yeah.
year after year,
Yeah.
and you've got a potential for issues, and that's why I
Mhm.
call it the supermodel diet, because I equate that removal of clippings and leaf litter to the laxative misuse, right? It's the same thing. All the nutrients are going down the can.
Yeah. There was a
Yeah,
comment in the
so
chat. I haven't been watching the chat, but there was a comment that said, "What about golf courses?" That's where I did most of my stuff, is on golf courses. I don't know if that comment was about this particular methodology.
Mhm.
But I do the same thing on golf courses. Putting greens,
yeah,
tees. I mean, most of my work has been on golf courses, fairways. I mean, it's easy to go, well, I'm not going to wait. I'm just going to go out there and spray the whole thing with whatever and cure it. That's antiquated thinking. Probably would work. To be honest with you, I'll be frank. If you put in a bunch of just junk and spray it out, you're probably going to, the answer's probably in there
you're probably
somewhere.
gonna you're probably gonna nail it. Yeah, you're probably gonna
Yeah,
nail
you're
it.
probably in there somewhere.
You're gonna
But
get
if we're moving, go ahead.
yeah, but then at the same time, I understand how that can get very costly at scale. It
Yeah,
can get
it's
extremely
costly.
costly versus, and
Yeah. And I'm
also
sorry, I
in
think there
this
might be a
day and
slight delay.
age,
I'm sorry, Ray.
yeah, it's costly, and also there's this matter of applying more than what you need. It's basically a no-no as well. So I'm in favor of isolating what's needed. What's actually needed. And it's funny you should mention golf course or golf turf, Dr. Shadis, because
Mhm.
the kind of turf that I typically work with is in many respects similar to a golf green or a golf tee.
Yeah.
Short height of cut and total
Mhm.
removal of clippings.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're removing clippings. Yeah, that's a different challenge there. So,
Yeah,
oh yeah, it can be
and
it can be used wherever. But the idea that you can just apply everything and solve the problem
mhm.
probably would work. But the mentality is antiquated, and we've got to start shifting our thought process, guys and gals. And I don't mean just on what we're talking about now. I'm talking about with water, with pesticides, with nutrients. We can't just go out and say, "Oh, we're go out there and throw out, 3 different pesticides and 6 different nutrients, and we're gonna run water over," we got a target on our back, whether we like it or not, and we've got to start thinking more consciously about the cost, both to our business, but also to the environment. It's many cases we're over applying nutrients that aren't particularly environmentally a concern. To be honest, they're not that big of a concern. But the idea, the concept, the critical thinking process about, like, just we're going to apply everything. Well, hold on here. We've got to start. We got to. We know a lot of people are. We got to continue to change our position such that we're fine tuning and precision management is
Precision, I
what
was gonna
we
say
need.
precision turf management is what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, we need to start moving. We are moving towards that direction, but it's understandable why it's difficult to move in that direction when you're waiting for an answer from the pathology lab. Meanwhile, you just go out there and spray out, propiconazole or whatever it is, and solve the problem. And then before you get the answer back, it's already done. So I get the difficulty in it. I understand that, but a little patience can go a long way. Not just with that particular lawn, but with your program, I think. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on that.
No, I agree. I think let me go back and read these because there's a couple that popped up. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really listen or watch the chat on this channel or even on my own channel. It's hard for me to keep up with it, but,
No, I
um
think Dylan Miller is talking about golf courses, which again, I think the hedge here, and again, sort of the dissonance to the wider adoption of precision turfgrass management is reasons that you just stated right there. It's easier to just push play and
Yeah.
carpet bomb the
It's
shit out of it
easier.
with whatever.
Yeah, it's easier and it's less threatening for it. It's more of a peace of mind because not because of the disease, but because you think you're going to lose that customer, or you think the golf pro is going to be upset, or you think you're going to lose your job. And I get all that. I mean, I believe me, I understand. It's a concern, and you can immediately alleviate that by going and doing that right now. Probably doing that right now instead of waiting for 4 days to get the report back. I'm going to go ahead and do it now. And I get that. Um, but people are changing. I think I do feel the pendulum's kind of coming back around where we're being a little bit more cognizant of the costs, not just financially or environmental, but just the cost in that thought process to our industry. We need to and are slowly sort of becoming more precision minded when it comes to these things. So I'll be honest. This all came about because we're talking about deficiencies. I don't mean to make it complicated. I mean to make it more simple, and that is nitrogen is gonna be your friend, and anything else you're gonna put in there, you should have a good reason for it, and there's very rarely good reasons. I mean, if you see a deficiency, take a soil test and confirm it, boom, put it out. Good reason, no problem. I'm good with that. But many, many times, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's extremely high that you just need nitrogen. Occasionally, you might need some phosphorus, and very rarely do you need potassium. The chances of seeing a turfgrass response to potassium are exceedingly low. Definitely can happen, but they're very, very low. So I mean to make it more simple, not more complicated. And sometimes I'm concerned maybe I'm making it more complicated than I intended.
Actually, you are.
But
I mean, I'm not saying this in a insulting way, but
mhm,
by having to narrow everything down to individual elements
yeah,
on a large scale, that makes it such that at scale, I can imagine the difficulty.
yeah,
Because on the other hand, the way I operate, it's very easy for me to be very individualized and precise. It's easy.
mhm,
But then
mhm,
I'm not dealing with 500 different turf areas over 100 miles. I'm not doing that. A
yeah,
little bit different.
I think here is the problem, and this is more of just a commentary editorial, so much as in my opinion, is that the efforts that are being made to increase the adoption of precision turfgrass management practices are very, very focused on the golf market right now. And I
Yeah.
think if we were to take, oh no, I mean not it's sports turf to a certain degree, but you're only seeing that adoption on a very small percentage of fields relative to the entirety of managed sports fields, right? I mean, parks and rec, high schools, things of that nature versus, say a professional sports field that can maybe afford or has the trained staff, right, to take on that type of responsibility and that decision making tree. I think the holdouts and maybe the reason that I don't know the reasons why lawn care isn't adopting it, but I could say that there's really not been a concerted effort from a industry level and from an academic level to address those specific concerns, right? Okay, the idea of high volume production lawn care does not match up with precision turf grass management, right? Like they're completely at opposite ends of the spectrum, generally speaking. So
mhm,
how do we move them closer to the middle, understanding that yes, compromise will probably have to be made, right, on both sides, and we need to find. And this is what I would say, right, from if I was going to challenge a researcher, I would say, okay, what would be the most impactful things that we could do, right? One or two or three practices that we could eliminate, improve efficiency of whatever the case might be, right? Um, to move these people towards the middle and maybe even create some momentum to say, hey, this stuff isn't so bad after all, right? Me taking
yeah,
these steps and me maybe saying, hey, I've got an N only program, but I'm going to carry, a bag of DAP on the truck
mhm,
because if I show up at this one house, I need to switch this in my spreader because I'll be site specific. Just something
Yeah.
simple like that. It's an easy,
Well,
tangible
there's
thing
just
to do.
it's just a different approach. I mean, it's the opt out rather than opt in approach.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No one's really doing the opt in approach. I said that from the beginning. No one's coming to me and saying I have nothing, build my program, and I build it from scratch. I want to opt in. I want to opt into things. Everybody's wanting
Well,
to opt out of things, and that's much more difficult. Much more
I
difficult.
think
So because
the other. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just saying it's much more difficult from a human psychological perspective because people are so accustomed and ingrained to putting out that magnesium, putting out that potassium. Oh, it's the stress blend. We're going to put out there's probably just as many examples of potassium causing more stress than as there are alleviating it. I can show you examples after examples of potassium resulting in greater microdokium, greater anthracnose, or on low end.
Okay.
And so
I can also attribute, high potassium levels to salts. I think we had this discussion before where, the osmotic potential of that soil, going way up because typical potassium source, for example, potassium chloride, does that ring a bell? Muriate of potash? I mean, what are we doing here? Because I know I personally am not a fan of putting out potassium without a good reason, and I'm even more critical of my potassium source. I'm even more cautious of my K source, Dr. Shaddox, because I know for me, I'm a industry renegade because my main potassium source is potassium nitrate.
Yeah, Potnet's good. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of good success with that product for sure over the years. No doubt.
However, even then, I have to have a reason for doing that potassium nitrate. I have to have a good reason.
Yeah, because it costs $1,300 a ton or whatever it is. It's very expensive.
Oh, don't say that. It's about $75 for 50 pounds here in Hawaii.
My God.
$75.
But right back to your point, Ryan, is like I would prefer to opt in. No one does it. So you're asking, the reality is people are going to start opting out. They want to, in order to move them more towards the center, more towards the evidence line, we have to figure out a way to have them opt out, okay, of certain things. That was one of your first questions. Opt out of the micronutrients. Sure. That's easy. Opt out. You're probably never going to see a response to zinc. The chance of you seeing a response to boron, it's ridiculous. I mean, get it out of there.
Check insane. My tissue levels just to make sure.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. All these micronutrient packages going out. You're probably, if you see anything, you're going to see a response from the counter ion being sulfate and zinc sulfate more than you are from the zinc itself. If that's the case, just apply ammonium sulfate and you'll be fine. Okay. So micronutrients can be almost completely eliminated in almost every case. Iron is the exception. Liquid iron is the exception. Liquid manganese, maybe. There's one or two there, but majority of them can be eliminated. Potassium and phosphorus can be greatly reduced, in my opinion. Knowing the little bit that I know about the literature, I don't think there's much evidence to support these really high rates of phosphorus and potassium. And this is a flaw, but I'm just going to say it anyway. The phosphorus levels in golf courses, phosphorus applications in golf courses, have been greatly reduced as a result of legislation. Greatly reduced, okay? And no one's running all over creation screaming and yelling because our turf grass is dying from a lack of phosphorus on golf courses in Florida. No one's doing that, okay? But we've greatly, greatly reduced it. And lo and behold, not much has happened, okay? And it's just... the evidence is what it is. I mean, you don't really need to apply as much as we're applying. That's what it comes down to. And when you do see a deficiency, just spray out a little bit, you'll be fine.
I guess the easiest way to say that, yes, is that, I asked the question, what are the ramifications? What are the consequences? And I think what I've heard here, based on the body of evidence, and it was a leading question a little bit, is to say that by adopting, if you wanted to go down this route, right?
Yeah.
And opt in, start with nitrogen only, and until you see an issue or whatever. But you are not jumping off of a skyscraper with no parachute, right? It is not.
At all. I mean, not at all. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know. This is a bad analogy, but it's like if you got dropped off in the middle of Zambia somewhere and they're speaking Swahili to you or something. You're like, you're completely lost and you don't know you're lost because you don't speak their language, but their culture works just fine. It works. Okay. They
Mhm.
speak, they have a government, they have men and women and babies, and they need all the same things we need. They just do it differently and it works just fine
Mhm.
there. It's the same thing here. If you tell everybody just apply nitrogen, they're going to freak out. Meanwhile, it works. Okay. In most cases, that's all you really need. But it's hard for people to truly feel comfortable with that when they've been so saturated with the concept of N and P and micronutrients and all this stuff for their entire career. It's not easy to get them to shift off of that center line. I empathize. I get that. But
Hmm.
you're right, right. You're not jumping off with no parachute and you're going to crash and die. If anything, the one piece of advice I give for anybody who chooses to take this plunge, maybe we should have like some sort of contest and see how many people can jump on board and do it, and take the challenge. The only one of the biggest piece of advice I can give you is you better double calibrate those spreaders that those guys are going out at, because you were spreading it at 250 and now you're going to go out with urea straight, or you're going to go out with ammonium sulfate straight at 125 or 150, much lower per acre, or I don't know what it is per 1,000 square feet, whatever. You better make sure, because you might be doubling your nitrogen because the spreader wasn't changed. And you're like, wait a second, I got to go out at a much lower rate. I was going out at
Shaddox,
this very high rate and I got to lower this thing down. You better be careful because you'll lose your profit real quick if you keep it at the same rate you were putting out before. Sorry, go ahead, Ray.
I have to interject a little in that I've had talks with the guys on the Discord about utilizing just ammonium sulfate or just urea as,
Okay.
their main program. And oftentimes, you know what I end up telling them to do? Because it is
Mhm.
difficult to spread small amounts of AMS or urea, I tell them, you better be dissolving that and spraying that rather than trying to sling that through a spreader, because the amount of product that you're actually applying per 1,000 square foot,
Mhm.
in many cases, it's no more than a pound or less per 1,000 square foot. It's not
Yeah.
a
Well, I mean,
lot.
if you're putting out urea, it's 2.2 pounds or whatever it is. It's 2.2 pounds per 1,000 square feet, which is not a lot. They
And
might have been putting out 5 or 10 before, you know.
yeah, of their
So
conventional granular
yeah,
blend. And
exactly.
likewise, my other point is that a lot of times you don't even need a pound of nitrogen at a time. It's unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree.
You don't need
Yeah.
it. You don't need it.
In the long since we're talking about rates and nitrogen, and I've never really mentioned this before, is that sometimes I also get the question, well, I'm going to put let's say, since you said you don't need a pound of nitrogen, let's say you're putting out a half a pound of N from urea. Let's just say that, okay? And you're also putting out a half a pound of N from like a 15,515. That's 100% urea. Okay, so you have a blended fertilizer that's 100% urea, and you have 100% 4600, and you put those both out at a half a pound of N. Some people say, well, I'm getting a better spread rate at that higher spread from the 15,515, but you're not. It's the exact same number of particles of urea going out at a half a pound of N from a 4600 and a half a pound of N from a 15,515. That's 100% urea. It's the exact same particles per square foot, because all the urea, all the nitrogen is from urea, and you're putting it out at the same rate of nitrogen. So some people get confused about that. It's just that you're lowering the bulk spread rate down very low, which can easily be done. I do it all the time. But you better be used to it, because if you're gonna go straight up for urea, you want to make sure that you're putting out the right rate, and you're probably going out at 2 or 3 times the rate from your conventional fertilizer, as you said, Ray. So maybe they're using a whatever, I don't know, whatever they were using, a 15,515 or 15, whatever the case is,
Right,
and their
right. It's
spreader is putting out 5 pounds per thousand. You need to make sure you're doing that. You're adjusting those down, especially if you're not the
because
one behind the spreader, because they're just spreading out all your
because
profit. You didn't
right
know it.
because as I said, when I've talked to these people, they give me a double take because I tell them, yeah, guess what your actual fertilizer application is going to be? It's going to be approximately 1/2 to 1 pound of
Yeah.
dry material per 1,000 square foot, and that's all
Yeah.
you need. And I say, oftentimes, the easiest and most accurate way to apply that much material to a given area is we've got to rethink the fertilizer spreader, because I know all too well the difficulties of trying to get a granular spreader to spread a product at a pound per thousand.
Yeah.
Because it's just not easy. It's not easy, Dr. Shaddox. I mean, I've seen people try to do it and fail. It just
Mm.
doesn't come out. And the other issue that I see when we get down to these low rate applications is I'm familiar with what I'm going to call the green Dalmatian effect.
Mm.
When
What's
these pearls of fertilizer applied at a low rate land far apart, and you end up polka dotting the turf.
Mhm.
So, it's like an entire adjustment in application methods and even application amounts. It's like an entire adjustment, because everybody is used to throwing out 3 to 10 pounds of granular material per 1,000 square foot every time they make an application. They're used to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
We're
low
we're
rate
creatures of habit. Yeah.
no, this low rate precision application is, man, that's going to require a seismic shift.
Yeah.
It's going to require a seismic shift for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I'm if it to opt in is like I said, is completely contrary to what most people do. They opt out, or so it's very different. Speaking a different language, people aren't used to it. They're gonna, if they want to do things efficiently and they want to get the most efficient program, then they're going to have to think differently, and sometimes that means speaking a different language. And in this case, we're speaking just the nitrogen language.
Mhm.
And I think my position, I'm pretty convinced that my position on this is well supported by the evidence. It's well supported by other faculty members and who are more knowledgeable on these issues than I am. It just doesn't. In fact, some of this research, the potassium research, was done because they were looking at, like, why are you guys putting out all this potassium? There's a guy who there's a guy at Texas A&M who's a microbiologist. I was told to say this on my channel. He gave a talk one time on microbiology, and he had a golf course superintendent. He's like, "Why are you guys putting out all these microbes in soils, all these bugs in a jug? Why are you guys doing this?" Well, what happened was the marketing got behind all these bugs in a jug, and next thing you know, it becomes common language in our industry, and no one with any knowledge ever came in and stopped it. And this microbiologist comes down there and goes, "You guys are crazy. What are you doing? This is insane. You guys are wasting tons of money." But meanwhile, it was decades and decades of just, we've been doing it. And now it's hard to change that habit. And it's the same thing with NPK and micros. If you've been doing it the same way over and over and over, it's really hard to change that habit. And what I'm letting you know, Ryan asked me a question. It's just a question. That's my opinion. And based upon the evidence, the best I know it, is I wouldn't be applying NPK and micros. I'd be applying primarily in. Occasionally, if there's a phosphorus deficiency, I'd apply some. If there's a potassium deficiency, I'd apply some. If I want a little color, I'd spray some iron, and that's basically it in a nutshell. And if there's other little things that pop up, they're very easily remedied. It's not the end of the world. It's usually pretty straightforward. But applying micronutrients to every lawn makes very little sense economically. It's just not supported by the evidence. The likelihood that you have, let's say you had 100 lawns, the likelihood that you even have 2 or 3 that have a zinc deficiency is exceedingly low. Boron deficiencies and all these things, it's just so low. It's and you could be you might have one, but it's so low, it's not worth including in the program, in my view. If we're looking to become more efficient. So
Mm.
that's my
Well,
take.
gentlemen, it is.
What's your take? Well, before we go, Ryan, what's your take?
Oh,
What would
What,
you do?
what was the question again?
Well, the question is, what would you eliminate first?
Out of the entire program?
If you're going to put something on the do not apply list, no matter what would it be?
If I had to start with something simple, I would say phosphorus for sure, and then probably potassium next. I think that those are two, again, what the evidence demonstrates, and also the risk to reward ratio on that situation. Right? There's few instances where it's absolutely necessary. I think that if you need to, right, based on a visual response. I'm a bigger proponent of, soil testing than what you might be, but I also think too that you cannot solely rely on numbers, right? There is still an art, right, and an experience factor of looking at turf and understanding the rigors that it's under. And I think this is the also too is my approach to building a lawn care program is similar to Matt's and much more similar to Ray's in that we are not selling a set of tasks that's hopefully going to produce a product. Rather, we're selling you the outcome and ultimately what it takes to get there. And that's a very different approach than how most lawn care programs are structured at this point. So I think that there's ways that folks can save. I think that ultimately you can't save your way into prosperity, and that if you return all of that or figure all of that to be in your margin, and that you're going to make all this profit simply by running nitrogen, I think you're mistaken. I think that you always need to have a contingency fund built up for, hey, when things arise and problems rear their head, you need to be able to deal with them. And I'm not just talking about nutrient deficiencies or other issues, right? You have to be able to respond. I think the thing I would eliminate too, here's a good one, here's a an interesting one, is that I think that our response in many cases in turf grass, and this goes golf course, sports, lawn care, I mean, I've seen it all, worked it all. I can say this with absolute certainty, is that I think far too often our response to underperforming or struggling turf grass is to simply fertilize it more with nitrogen and hope it gets better.
Very common.
And
yeah.
I think that response, right, if you're talking about opting in to things,
Mhm.
that is something that you should not necessarily do. I think that the power of observation, to your point, you go back to utilizing a plant diagnostic lab, right, or a plant pathology lab to accurately identify a disease, so that I don't make an incorrect product choice, not only waste the labor but use the wrong chemistry, for example, if we're going to talk about pathology, and then ultimately I've got to go back out and treat it again, or maybe I've even exacerbated the issue, right?
Mhm.
There's so again, I think that in and of itself is a very approachable way to start with turfgrass management. I like the opt in. I like that characterization, that nomenclature, if you will, of how to get folks to think about, shall I do or shall I not do, and are there legitimate reasons why I'm actually doing this. I'll show you this, and I think maybe we're running out of time here, but I do want to do this. J Pink's gonna kill me, by the way. Let me see if I can find this really quick.
Glyphosate.
I don't think that Dr. Shaddox has met the glyphosate guy. If he has,
Uh,
let's
I
see
used to
here.
work with a guy that couldn't pronounce glyphosate to save his life. He always said glyphosate. He couldn't pronounce it.
I think it's a speech impediment, and I'm not talking down to people with speech impediments. I just think that. Let's see
Well,
if I can
I,
find
I
it.
think I think it's more like a developmental disability, Ryan.
Jeez, maybe. I think
Okay,
that's.
I mean that's more like it. It's not a speech thing, because people incapable of pronouncing things, people that
That's
instead they just wing it.
Mm.
I call that developmentally disabled.
here we go.
To put it nicely, we're going to
Copy.
keep it that way because this is YouTube.
All right, I'm gonna send this to J Pink. We're gonna look at this real quick, and then we're gonna let Dr. Shaddox plug his channel, and we're gonna get out of here so J Pink can go to bed. J Pink, put this up. And for those of you that cannot join us in Daytona, this will actually be on my presentation that I have to send to Dr. Shaddox in the next 12 or so
One.
hours so that he can ship it out to
Yeah.
the powers that be. All right. This is it right here. And maybe you disagree. I'd like you to look at this and think about this, okay? Because you have a much more analytical and deeper thinking mind than I'll ever have. And God bless you for that. Seriously. There are 4.
By the way,
Only
Ryan.
4. Yes.
Ryan, this is my favorite quote right here. This right here is my favorite absolute thing.
I wrote this some years ago, Dr. Shaddox, as I thought about an opt-in strategy. Okay, I didn't characterize it at the time, but whatever. I was on that same path, right? Of why or why not should we do this, right? And what I thought about was that there are only 4 types of products that we apply turf grass. Only these 4 exist, and nothing
Okay.
else. Okay, products that flat out don't work. We know that these products are applied. You see these and probably shake your head and say that's absurd because they have 1 million views on YouTube.
Okay.
2, products that make you feel good about applying, but you don't know if they really work. We just talked about that, right? Marketing is
Yeah.
at the root of that effort.
Powerful, yeah.
Products that you know that work, but don't really make you feel good. Well, we all know that there are products, and not necessarily in fertility, unless you get into some of the fancy jugs
Yeah.
and foliar stuff and whatnot. But especially on the control side, that gosh, I don't like paying for this, but darn it, it works.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is, right? It's hard to stomach and it's
Yeah.
hard to swallow for a lot of people on the pricing side. Finally, products that make you feel good about applying them because you know they really work, see good value, right? And I think what in a very crude sense, what you're after is as many number 4s as you can spray or spread on a lawn at any given time, as needed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to find the whatever fertilizer. I'm the fertilizer business, so I mean that's what I don't can speak to anything else. But what is the minimum amount of the least expensive product that I need to apply to result in whatever product I'm trying to produce? That's what I'm looking for. So I can make the lawn look good with every product except number 1, I guess. Maybe number 2. In other words, nitrogen from urea or polymer coated urea can make the lawn look great. I feel a lot better about urea being in product category number 4. Polymer coated
I
ureas are
agree.
always going to be in number 3. But the lawn will look the same, more or less. The lawn will look the same. The turf grass will look basically the same, regardless from those sources, assuming you apply them at the right rate for the respective released characteristics. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell someone not to spend their money on polymer coated urea. It's their money. I'm saying I wouldn't spend it on there because the cost to achieve the result is much greater than it is from urea. In most cases, there might be some strange situation, but yeah, I see what you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So iron oxide's in category number 1. Can we put iron oxide in category? So you were asking me what basically at the beginning, what would you completely eliminate? So you're asking what products go into category number 1. I would say I can't put all micronutrients permanently in there, but scientifically, but pragmatically, I would. Yeah, pragmatically, they basically have no chance of seeing a response from the majority of those, except for iron and maybe manganese.
Fair
So
enough.
yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
I just
All right,
ask
guys, I got to go
people
to
as
bed
an
before my wife.
I have to go to
comes
bed.
out
Hey,
here, so-
where do they find you? How can they find you?
Oh yeah.
If they're
So yeah, just be sure if you want to. I'm on YouTube Live on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. on turfgrass epistemology, and then I come on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. I do a Wednesday night show. For right now, it's probably going to change at some point. It already has changed once. It'll probably change in the future. I'd like to do a little bit better content, which means I'll probably do less content, but less quantity, but better quality content. So we'll see if that comes around. I don't know, and then go on any of the podcasts and you can listen to, like, for example, if I did a show today, you could listen to the podcast tomorrow. And look for me in North Florida and Daytona. If you want to come over and say hello, come over and say hello.
There you go.
Okay.
All right,
guys.
Right.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
All right.
Everybody
Good night,
guys
all.
listening. All right.
Appreciate it.
See y'all. Bye.
All right. See ya. Bye.